Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Wire2Wire Sports Podcast. And this is show 150. Show 150. I'm your handsome host, the NFL genius, Gene Walzak. And in my upper left corner, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, College Cutro.
Hey, Gene, I'm loving the energy today, and you didn't say anything bad about my hoodie. You said it pre-show, but you didn't say it just now. So, we're already off to a great start.
You know why?
I'll say it. It's terrible.
Do you know why I didn't say it?
I don't know.
Because I'm
secretly love it.
Sports. I'm in the game.
You secretly love it.
Maybe I do. You never know. I will say this: in the upper right corner, I got Scholastic Shally, Uncle Shally. I got to switch it up. He's Uncle Shally for the 8 months out of the year, but for these 4 months, he is Scholastic Shally. So, Scholastic Shally, how you feeling, brother?
I'm good. In fact, I got to look at that hoodie for the next 2 hours. I'm in a good mood. Well, you should got the reversed. If it was reversed, it would have been all right. If it was brown with orange writing, I would have liked it.
Nope.
I don't know. I like the brown color. I just don't like the browns. I think it's I think it might be the worst name in all of sports.
In all of
Browns.
That's
yes. Tough. The Browns. Are we for real right now? Like what? Like let me ask you a question. Objectively, do you think the Browns are a good I don't know, good name? Do you think that's a good name?
No, I mean, it's very, very basic. So I'm not saying it's a great name by any means, but if anything, I would say the only thing that I don't like about the Browns is the lack of logo up until a couple years ago. Like obviously, we had the dog as a secondary. They finally brought back Brownie the elf. The helmet logo got a little played out, very basic. Nothing that you could throw on the helmet, but outside of that, though, everything that is great about that organization.
Outside of that, everything is great. Come on, stop it. Don't lie to yourself. Jeff Judge is right. The Reds are right up there with it, but it might be the whole state of Ohio doing dumb stuff like that because the Reds are Cincinnati. Well, why are we naming teams after colors? The St. Louis Blues. I get it. At least blues is like, it could be music, a music note. Yeah, like I get that, right? What is Browns?
Paul Brown.
So you just named it after Paul Brown?
That's what happens when you own a team. You can name it whatever the hell you want to.
Kind of terrible, right? I'm gonna name a team named the Walzaks. Like that's stupid. I don't know. All right, so we got a lot to get into this show. We have UFC discussion. We're going to talk about the shot heard around the world. Sean O'Malley, got to give him his credit, man. Got to give him his credit. So let me ask you, before we kind of get too far into it, Sean O'Malley, is he still like overrated or was it, or the question would be, or is Aljamain super overrated for what happened? Like, did he finally get caught up? And caught was Sean O'Malley just underrated and we weren't giving him credit, or was Aljamain overrated, or was it just essentially like a lucky punch?
I would lean. I don't want to say it's a lucky punch because that's what O'Malley does. I mean, he likes to counter punch, he likes to strike. He took his shot and he hit it. Aljamain won the first round. That fight was going, to some degree. I think the way we all thought it was going to go, and then. Listen, that's why they call it a fight. That's why we don't do everything on paper. He hit that one punch and then all hell broke loose. He finally got the stoppage, TKO from ground and pound. But I would say I would still lean more towards I think O'Malley's a little bit overrated.
Cottrell?
For me, I think I would also I don't want to say O'Malley is overrated because I don't think he is overrated after seeing that performance. And in all honesty, it brings me back to the time. And I know people keep comparing him to Conor McGregor, and I'm not saying Jose Aldo is Aljamain Sterling by any stretch of the comparison, but it just brings me back to that time. He landed that one punch that really just put him on top of the world. And I think that's where O'Malley is at right now. I don't want to say that that's taken away from Aljo. Because
comparing this to the Aljo. You're comparing this to the Aldo punch, aren't you?
No. I'm not comparing
that.
The punches aren't the same. I'm just talking about the ascension. I mean, O'Malley has already been on top of the world. At that time, McGregor was starting to get there. He beat Chad Mendez and, starting to become a household name. And then that punch really just set off, the rest of the stage of his career. But what I'm saying is when Conor, landed that punch on Aljo, we didn't talk about Aldo being this overrated athlete, things like that. That's where that comparison comes in. So I actually think it's more of neither. Like, I don't think O'Malley's overrated. I do wish I could have saw him a little bit more and longer in that fight because I do want to see what he looks like going up against a wrestler, especially when they get into the thick of it later in the rounds and things like that. But I mean, when you have that kind of power in that weight class, I mean, that's something that people have to fear. And if they don't make it that long to get into those muddy waters in the 4th and 5th round, that's not something that's O'Malley's fault. You got to find a way to get there and drag him to those muddy waters. So
drag him to the muddy waters.
I don't have a way that I'm leaning either way.
I think I'm a hater of both fighters, but I can't hate on the knockout. Like I can't. Like, how do you hate on that knockout? It was clean. And I will say this. I think that the knockout wasn't really a knockout. I'll say this now, and I'll say it again. Early stoppage. I said the same thing as Zhang Weili. I think they're early stoppages. I think that you have to really allow these. Like, Aljo's kicking up. I'm not saying the fight would have changed. I'm just saying I think that you should make sure the guy's out, especially in a championship fight. Guys, do you remember Brock Lesnar versus Shane Carwin? You tell me that Shane Carwin shouldn't have stopped Brock Lesnar in the first round. I mean, he absolutely demolished him that entire first round. And they didn't stop it because Brock was the champion. Now, with Aljamain Sterling, he's kicking up and trying to improve position, and they stopped the fight. Look, nothing away from the punch. The punch was perfect. It landed flush. Aljamain missed with his punch, and Sean O'Malley didn't miss at all. Hit it clean. However, can we please just give credit where credit is due when a guy's trying to fight and trying to get out of that situation? Just go back and watch the replay. You tell me Aljo's out. Go back and watch the Zhang Weili Rose replay. You tell me Zhang Weili is out. She's not out. Give them the shot. Listen, people rabbit punch as soon as a fighter falls to the ground. They rabbit because they want to get the stoppage. Doesn't mean the fighter's out. Your thoughts on those two? I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I wouldn't disagree necessarily that it was a semi-early stoppage. I'm not going to compare it to the Weili and Rose thing, though. I think they were different. I think the only problem with the Aljamain was, if you watch it a couple times, his initial scramble. I agree with you. He was definitely there. He was trying to position himself, spin around, not get hit. He still took a couple bombs. When he did finally go to his side, he did take 2 or 3, hammer fist straight to the face, and really definitely wasn't out, but definitely didn't try to, ardently defend himself and, put his hands up and block it. And I think that's what eventually caused the stoppage. He saw 3 in a row get through, and Aljamain really not improve his position or at least get back to his back. And like you were saying, kick up or try to pull guard or anything. That was that. I agree with you 100% on the Brock one. The Brock fight probably could have been stopped 3 times. I think that's one of the worst non-stoppages ever. But I think there's some credence to it. But I think the more I watch it, I don't think it's an awful stoppage. Maybe slightly premature, but I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the means.
Nick Dola says definitely could have gave him 30 more seconds. He was moving more and wasn't out. I agree. Eric Rosenblum said his head bounced back pretty hard against the mat. He looked out to me. Wayne Curtis said he gave up his back with no defense.
You don't have to be out to be stopped. So, I mean, it's if you're not intelligently defending yourself.
I thought he was still trying to intelligently defend himself. Like, there's a time where you're on your back, right? And you're in a bad position. but that doesn't mean you're done. You're not intelligently defending yourself.
Well, I also think though that there's part of it too where if you're just laying on your back and covering up, and I'm not saying this was fully Aljo, but laying on your back and cover up, and there doesn't look like there's a sign of you getting out of this position anytime soon, then you still got to stop the fight. Although, I mean, technically you are defending yourself, intelligently. You're not knocked out necessarily, but if there is no improvement on a position after a certain amount of time, you do have to stop that fight. Now, do I think this one is an early stoppage? I'd lean to the side and say yes, that it is a little bit early, but I have no real issues with it. I do think too it says something that after the fight, Aljo wasn't necessarily adamant that it was an early stoppage and saying that he could have got out of it. I do think that it was interesting that he also mentioned that if he got hit like that by O'Malley, he can only imagine what a guy like Volk would do to him. So I think that is perspective as well. I'm sure Aljo didn't want to stop that early, but I also do think he realizes that, I know how it looked and they stopped it because that's how they felt. And I can't necessarily be mad they did that.
So he didn't say that after the fight, but he did say it on the podcast the next day. Just to be clear, he did call out the referee. I forget the guy's name that had the early stoppage. And he said that he's known for having early stoppages, particularly in championship fights.
But that came out too because Merab Divashvili said it right after the fight too. He doesn't want I think it's Mark Goddard is the one who was
Mark Goddard. That's it. Sorry,
is the one that stopped the fight early, and he said for their entire team, like they've had other fighters be in that situation where they stopped the fight early, things like that. But I mean, I also think you have a day to reflect on it. You also get a chance to see the replay, things like that. But in the moment, I think that's where the real raw emotion comes from. And if you didn't feel like in the moment that you got cheated and that you got shortchanged in that fight, not saying you can't change your mind, but you at least understood that there was a reason why they stopped that fight when they did.
Okay. So the question I would ask before we get into the rest of the card is who do you think the next fight for Sean O'Malley should be? And I'm gonna give you A, B, and C. You only can pick from 3. That's it.
Well, I mean, I know the one I'm going with, so.
Well, we're not going Aljamain. We're taking him off the table.
Okay, as we should.
So Merab, that's one. That's A. Peter Yan, that's B.
Nope.
And the third option you have is Chito Vera.
Chito Vera, that's your correct answer right there. Chito's already beaten him once. You saw, regardless of how you feel about the decision with O'Malley and Peter Yan, that's a fight that he just had and he won already. Chito's been on the ascension. I didn't love Chito's fight, on that same card. Was a little boring, wasn't Chito-esque, but Chito is the one guy that has that blemish on O'Malley's record. And I think that fight, it sells itself. O'Malley wants it, clearly. Chito has climbed up the ranks. I think that's the fight that makes the most sense right now. Normally, I would say Merab is that guy, but with O'Malley's history, with Chito climbing the ranks right now, how he's doing, I just think this is a fight that makes the most sense.
Shadi, what do you think out of those 3, A, B, or C? What fight do you think makes the most sense?
Out of those 3, I mean, I think the answer is, I agree with Cottrell. I think it's C. I mean, the obvious build to that is that's O'Malley's loss. So I think it's C. I think it's either between Chito or I think it's, Aljamain running it back. I'm getting a little bit tired of the immediate rematches for belts, so I'd rather see something different. I'll understand if they give it to Aljamain, but I'd rather see Chito. I just hope he fights a little different than he fought Saturday. I do agree with Cottrell there as well. It's the first time I can kind of remember him kind of fighting. I don't want to use the word safe, but it kind of was. It was not a very
not a 3-round fighter. He's a terrible 3-round fighter. He's a slow starter in every match. You've seen it at the end of the second round where he started taking control, and the third round he absolutely dominated. The third round was terrible. Like it was a destruction. And by the way, just to be clear, that scorecard was ridiculous. Somebody had 30-27 for Chito Vera. I thought he could have lost a split decision, if I'm being honest.
Facts.
I think 2 judges had a 30-27. The other one
no, it's 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. I remember because I had a parlay on it. And I'm like, and as soon as I heard 30-27, I'm like, I know I won because the third round was the most clear and obvious, but the first round, I don't know how you give the round to Chito Vera.
No clue. He didn't even look like he was. I mean, I guess sparring wise, he was there with Pedro, but I don't know how you give it to him either. I thought it was a clear Pedro round one.
I think that Sterling said originally Cheeto because of the fight card, but not Sterling, sorry. O'Malley originally said Cheeto during the fight card, and then right afterwards completely went towards Merab. He wants Merab now. I don't know if how that came across, why he switched really quick, but it seems like he's trying to lean towards Merab, when in reality, I think the fight that sells the best is Cheeto. And in a 5-round fight, don't take this the wrong way, and maybe I'm wrong, I think it's a really bad matchup for Sean O'Malley.
I mean, if I'm O'Malley, I don't think my first defense, I want to get in the cage with a guy that already beat me. I think these guys, once you get the belt, I think you want to try to get in there and get a fight that's comfortable for you, where you feel super confident going in and kind of get your title reign, kind of started and get it moving. Getting in there with the guy that in your head you already know beat you is probably not ideal. And maybe he thinks it's a better matchup for him and Merab. I don't know. But I mean, there's mixed messages coming out of the camp. So I'm going to be curious to see what gets announced here in the next, month or so with his first defense and what becomes official.
I also think it would be, from a business standpoint, I think it would make more sense for Dana to throw Cheeto in there with Sean, because regardless of what happens between Cheeto and Sean, Merab's right there and he's your number one contender, clear cut. Merab's not going to fight Aljo. So in reality, Aljo's probably out of the championship picture for the time being, at least for the next year and a half, as long as Merab doesn't get injured, because, those two aren't going to fight each other. So, I mean, I think you throw Sean out there with Cheeto, and then right after that, you have Merab as your number one contender. And you talk about not wanting to get in there with Cheeto because he already beat you. I wouldn't want to get in there with Merab. Merab is a killer. He fights very similar fight style wise. I'd beg to compare him to Volk. I'm not saying he's on Volk's level, but that's how he fights. He's very dominant in the clinch. He has the power, and he's going to attack you for 5 rounds straight with that energy. So I wouldn't want to get in there with Merab.
I'm not going to go ahead. Sorry, but
no, I was going to say, I don't think Aljamain's out of the title picture for a year and a half. I mean, he's got a couple defenses. I think if he wants to fight, and he wants to fight the winner of whoever they fight next. If he doesn't, I don't know if he had an automatic rematch clause or not.
I don't know why you just don't set it up where O'Malley fights Cheeto and Aljamain fights Merab, and the winner.
Because they're not going to fight each other, especially for a non-title.
Because of the camps.
Because they're in the same camp.
I hate that.
I do.
It bothers me so much.
It's weird.
But
we talked about it 2 weeks ago.
The reason why I say probably like a year to a year and a half is because you just saw what Merab did to Peter Yan. And so clearly he's going to be a step ahead of there. And I think for Aljo, that's really the only fight that really kind of makes sense. You had your blemish in the first fight. You came back, won a split decision that people thought was a very close fight. You both really have nowhere to go. That's the fight I think is next for Aljo, but that doesn't move the needle in the championship picture, especially when you have Merab and Cheeto and
Peter Yan.
That fight, Peter Yan in that mix. So just kind of think that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so I don't want to go too far into this card, guys. We got too big of a show tonight. We got the Big Ten. We got the quarterbacks rankings, which is one of the biggest things we do all year. And my quarterback rankings last year were spot on. Running backs, not so much. Quarterbacks, fire. I didn't have Aaron Rodgers. I didn't have Tom Brady. Y'all called me crazy, but we got a lot to get into, but I don't want to just glaze over to pay-per-view. So my question I'll ask each one of you guys, I mean, obviously, we don't need to talk about Zhang Weili. She's friggin' dominated that fight. That was pure excellence.
That was a beating.
Can we talk about just real quick 50-43? And I'm not saying that the fight wasn't that, but like that may have been the worst score I've ever heard, like in my time watching you. I don't know if I've ever heard of 50-43.
Oh, I've heard worse. I really have. I feel like that could have been – that fight was 50-43. I felt like that was right.
No, I agree with the scoring. I'm just saying, like, a fight that lopsided on the actual scorecard.
On the main card, I haven't seen things like that, but I've definitely seen that on, well, I guess 50-43. I'm talking about, I've seen a 30-24 before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying like in a 5-round fight, 50-43, like
You're right.
That's vicious.
What on the card most impressed you? Person that you liked watching the most? Like, first of all, Ian Gary absolutely destroyed Neil Magny. You can say that. I have somebody that neither one of you guys are going to say, so I'm fine. Have fun.
I was going to say Ian Gary. I think, Magny did a really good job of, talking himself into that fight. And I think giving a lot of people the impression that he had a shot. We all predicted it last show and we all picked Gary to win, but that kid he keeps looking better. I mean, I don't know if we've seen his best fight yet. He's gonna keep rising, and again, I think it was another dominant performance. It was impressive.
Oh, we'll get into that, Stephen Chambers. We will get into that, Trey Lance. I got words for that.
Ian Gary is my easy answer. I truly feel like Ian Gary put himself in a great spot with that showing. He had Neil Magny really had the chance to stop him in that second round. Like the judge was being very lenient because he was chopping down those legs, and you could tell that Neil Magny couldn't move at all. But I also love his call out afterwards. I think it'd be an amazing fight to see him step in there with Stephen Thompson. Yep. With Stephen Thompson being that kickboxer, having that background, that those guys are going to stand and bang. So I would love to see that matchup, and that's a true test to see where Ian Gary's stand-up really is. So I hope that fight happens.
Well, somebody made me a fan of them during this card, and they didn't win. They didn't even win their fight. Damon Blackshear, let me give him some credit. He went up against Mario Batista 8 days after his last fight. He fought 8 days ago, won his fight.
Twister.
And by the way, you could easily make an argument that he beat Mario Batista. That was a really good fight. He outstruck him. He took him down more. I get it, round by round scoring, and I think I had Batista in the 29-28 win. I understand that. And more physical damage at the end, maybe. I can make an argument that Damon Blackshear won that fight. It was a great fight, and he did it on 8 days without prep. I got to give him credit. I became a fan. What did you guys think of Blackshear Batista?
I thought Blackshear did a great job. He's huge for that weight class, and you mentioned it. He just fought last week, and he had the third twister in UFC history. And so, obviously for Batista, he mentioned afterwards, and his camp said it as well, that they had to game plan for that because just knowing that was in his wheelhouse, you knew he was dangerous on the ground. And I mean, I think to Blackshear's credit, I truly think if he had a full camp for this fight, he would have won. It just looked like he had nothing left in the tank in that third round. And you saw it towards the end of the second round as well. So I think if he had some more cardio there, he would have won that fight. And so I do think he has the potential to be a rising star. And that's the easiest way to get on Dana White's good side. You step into fights like this last minute, and he can depend on you to be ready to rock and roll and not just go out there and throw out a dud, but actually compete and be ready to go. Dana's gonna find ways to move you up in the picture.
He'll get rewarded for this. And again, anybody who fights 8 days ago and gets back in the cage to fight a guy you're not prepared for, I give all the credit in the world to. I know you can go through a fight and not take a lot of damage and things of that nature, but your body's still exhausted after a fight. Between the adrenaline and the energy, you expound to fight and everything else, your body is not fully recouped in 8 days. It's just not. So to get back in there and put on the performance he did, you have to like him. You have to give him a credit, and I agree with both of you. I think Dana will reward him in some fashion for it.
Out of all things, I don't even think it's maybe the exhaustion level is the right word, but the fact that the weight cut, then the weight gain, then the weight cut again, all happening within 8 days, that's the part that really throws off your body's system, right? Yeah. You are allowed to kind of let your body relax after a strenuous weight cut and then a fight. But when you have to weight cut right after you just gained it all back, it's not fun. It's not easy. Eric Rosenblum mentioned time for Weidman to retire. Listen, I give all the credit for Chris Weidman getting back in the ring. He didn't look terrible. He definitely got his legs chopped down, but he didn't look terrible. He looked competitive in the fight. I understand it was 30-27 on some scorecards, but I felt like he went into the fight with Brad Tavares and was a warrior, right? He went and fought in and gave it everything he got. He didn't get stopped. Even though his legs were getting chopped down, he switched legs. He handled himself southpaw, something that wasn't done later in the card when with Neil Magny couldn't switch to southpaw whatsoever. Chris Weidman battled. I thought there was an opportunity at the end of the second round for him to stop him. I really did. It is time for him to retire, though. I don't think that he should continue fighting, but I understand wanting to get back in the cage after that significant injury. So I wanted to at least give that credence.
I mean, it's nice that he got back in the cage, but I 100% agree with Eric. It's definitely time for him to retire. Not going to lie, watching his legs get chopped down like that, it was making me cringe every time it happened after the first round. I thought that there was a point in time where, like, his knee just might come right off the bone, just because of the injury history. And clearly that was the game plan going in. So whoever Chris Weidman would fight next, they're going to have that same game plan to know they can chop him down and he's not going to be able to move. And I get it, being a warrior, things like that. But look, you've overcame that injury. You went back in there. You've proven that you can still be a high caliber athlete. You were a champion before. It's time to call it quits. Dana shouldn't throw him back in there.
Okay, gentlemen, it is time for the Big Ten. It's time for Big Ten talk. You guys saved it for last, even though Georgia's constantly the best team and the SEC's the better conference. That's okay. You disagree. That's okay. I actually agree with you guys this year. I think the Big Ten is the better conference than the SEC. I think this is the first year the Big Ten is the better conference than the SEC in a long time. But I do agree. What? What'd you say?
I said since last year.
I disagree with that. I think that we're looking at one of the best conferences we've seen out of the Big Ten for the last 15 years. We have 3 legitimate title contenders. We have 2 other teams that are legitimately going to compete. It's a shame that the 3 title contenders are all on one side of the damn bracket, but we won't get into that. Let's get started talking Big Ten football. Last week, I gave Cottrell the honors of who goes first, second, third. This week, Scholastic Shalley. What's the order?
I'll let Cottrell go first. I'll go second. You can go last.
Thank you, sir. I'll appreciate my third. I like to listen to your wisdom. Listen to you guys. You guys are definitely a little further advanced than I am. Big Ten football, scholastically. But that's okay. I make up for it with a little NFL. I dabble.
You've come a long way. You come. I mean, especially if you consider
3 years ago.
I was going to say where we were 3 years ago, and you barely wanted to talk about it. To now, you're in it. I mean, I know. Well, I know it helps when your team wins back-to-back national championships. That heightens the interest. But
Penn State did not win backto-back national championships.
I know. Penn State welcomed you back this year. So
right.
I mean, you're
week 8.
You're there to like week 8, week 9, and then it'll be, I'm gonna go down south for the winter and hang out with Georgia. I get it.
What you got to do. Sometimes you got to be a snowbird. You got to fly down. The weather gets cold up here.
Yeah.
The weather gets cold.
It does.
All right.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. The older I get, the more I get it. When I was younger, I was like, I don't mind the winter. I'm staying here. Screw Florida. I don't care. The older you get, though, I kind of get it.
See, I accept this call out. It's the only sport that I do have a second team in out of all sports. It's the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. I actually call people out for having second teams.
Right. There we go.
So let's get rolling.
Steven Chambers got a good guy already.
Cottrell, let us know your finals. Let us know why. Give a little bit of a college Cottrell breakdown. And let's get rolling.
Yeah, so I mean, You already kind of touched on it. You know, your three heavy hitters in this conference are going to all be on the same side in Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State this year. Three are already ranked in the preseason top 10, as they all should be. I fully expect them to be as competitive as they should be based on the preseason rankings. But I'm going to start off on the other side. Team I like coming from the other side is Wisconsin. You got first-year head coach Luke Fickell. I think he's going to bring a flair to that Wisconsin team. And I think they did a great job of getting rid of their Achilles heel. Regardless of the talent that Graham Mertz had coming in, he wasn't a great fit there. And I think you saw that in the way Wisconsin looked on the field. You know, people thought that, you know, bringing in a guy like Graham Mertz, that Wisconsin offense was going to look different, not just be predominantly run. And, you know, that wasn't the case. You know, against all of the Power 5 conferences of quarterbacks that play Power 5 teams all year long, Graham Mertz rated last in pretty much every major statistical category. So I think with Luke Fickell being there and them bringing in a very seasoned veteran in Tanner Mordecai from SMU, he's got the Stetson Bennett track record. He's been in college for about 7 years at this point. I think that experience mixed with Luke Fickell, plus Wisconsin's bringing back one of the best running backs in the country in Braylon Allen. I think Wisconsin is going to find a way to make it to the championship game in Luke Fickell's first year back in the Big Ten. Now on the other side of things, it wouldn't be me if I didn't go with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Talent-wise, they're bringing back a lot. Obviously, they lost the man up top in C.J. Stroud to the draft, but offensively, they bring back pretty much everyone else outside of Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones as well. So they're bringing back 8 of their 11 starters from last year. Defensively, they're bringing back a lot as well. Didn't really lose too much to the draft on that side of the ball. Biggest question mark though is going to be the quarterback play, and I want to say this now, and I would absolutely never ever pick Michigan over Ohio State, but this is a year where Ohio State has to travel to Michigan. Michigan has to travel to Penn State, and Penn State has to travel to Ohio State. Now, I'm not expecting it to happen because I'm expecting the Buckeyes to go 12-0 and cement their spot in the Big Ten championship game and ultimately go to the college football playoff. But I do not think if it's a crazy world if all three of these teams lost that one road game to each other. And at the end of the year, you're looking at 3 teams at 11-1, figuring out how do you determine that tiebreaker.
It's funny you say that, and I can't get into mine, but I don't know, how does that work? How does the tiebreaker work if that happens? Because that's what I have happening.
It'll go who's ranked higher in the polls.
Okay, so then I know what my answer is. I'm good. I'm ready. I'm EA Sports. So you're going Ohio State over Wisconsin?
Ohio State over Wisconsin in the championship game. Doug is like the worst kind of fan there is. He's a Michigan fan. He's a Cowboys fan. I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that.
So Doug is a Michigan fan, a Cowboys fan, a Yankees fan, a Lakers fan. It's not a joke. I can't make it up.
Just disgusting.
Yeah. Tell me you grew up in the 90s without telling me you grew up in the 90s.
He didn't. Doug grew up in the 60s, 70s. I'm kidding. He grew up in the 70s. That might have been British. But yeah. Doug's
coming after you now.
I was not. I don't want the smoke, bro. Gotta be careful.
If he grew up in the 70s, damn, you said he's really old, Gene.
He did grow up in the 70s. That's not a joke. That's not only real Cowboys fans like one of the Texas college football teams. That's what Wayne said. Okay. So, Shally, I'm assuming you have Michigan over somebody else.
I'm going to start in the West like Cottrell did. I think Iowa is a dark horse team in the West. They brought in a couple big transfers, had a decent recruiting class, and returned a couple big names. I think they're a team to watch. The only reason I'm not picking them is because I think the game that's going to matter, that's going to decide the West, is going to be held in Madison, Wisconsin. And that's who I'm picking to win the Big Ten West this year. This is not going to be a Grand Pops Badgers team that you're used to seeing, kind of ground and pound, two rushes and 3rd and 3 and try to throw it. not the team, not that type of team this year. Cottrell already mentioned Luke Fickell is on campus. He brought in North Carolina's offensive coordinator, and they're bringing the air raid with them. They have SMU transfer in Tanner Mordecai, like he said. They're going to throw the ball. And on top of everything else, they have everything. Running back Braylon Allen has a chance to be All-American this year. I think you match them up with Chimere Dyke and Skylar Ball. They're gonna have a way more explosive offense than you're used to seeing out of Wisconsin. So I'm favoring Wisconsin to win the West because, like I said, that game is at home in Madison. I don't think Iowa's going to go in there to win. I think Iowa's offense will be improved this year. Nowhere near as good to keep up with the level of a Wisconsin team. I think as long as their defense can hold them in games in the beginning and let the offense get comfortable running the system in live situations, I think Wisconsin's going to be fine. Wisconsin defense returns 8 of 11 starters, either starters or people who played significant time last year. So defense is going to be the strength of that team early on, especially. So I like Wisconsin to come out of the West. In regards to the East, this is no surprise. The best team in the East is Michigan. You want to win the Big Ten, it's going to go through Michigan this year. They return almost everybody. If you are a diehard Michigan fan, this was kind of the year that everybody was circling for this team to be really good. The last 2 years were just kind of a surprise and, in a good way that they were a little bit of ahead of schedule. But everybody was pointing this year with J.J. McCarthy being a junior, Donovan Edwards, all those guys. They're all back. J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in the Big Ten. He is going to be backed by the best 2 running backs in the Big Ten, the best offensive line in the Big Ten. It's everything's there. Everything's there for a repeat run. Defense is going to be fine. Especially
wait, hold on. Did you just say that the best 2 running backs in the Big Ten both play for Michigan?
He did.
Yep.
That's incorrect. That's incorrect.
Blasphemous.
Yeah.
Look, I'm unbiased in that conversation. You can't say that.
Well, I said it. I'll say it again. The best running back duo in the Big Ten resides in
Duo. Okay, that's fair.
That's false too, but
that's not false. The best duo.
They're the 3rd best duo in the Big Ten.
Oh God.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. I mean,
get at it. I don't mind. I'm here for it.
Oh, no, it's fine. We'll count Travion. I mean, you played 4 games a year, so I mean, I hope
he had 1 season last year, and you expect Blake Corum to come back from this injury. He was supposed to go to the draft last year. Realized he had shit stock because he's not a great running back. He's
not a good NFL running back. That has nothing to do with college. I don't want to hear the semantics BS, dude. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care what he's going to do in the pros. I care what he does on Saturdays. He's a college running back. Donovan Edwards is better than any of them.
Donovan Edwards is a stud. I'll take nothing away from him. I've been on the Donovan Edwards hype train since he came out of high school. Since we started the show in 2020, I've been all aboard. Your
secondary still chasing him from last year.
Donovan Edwards is probably the best running back in the Big Ten, if I'm just being non-biased here. But Blake Corum, not in on that hype train. Look, I get it. Ran for a lot of yards last year.
As soon as he changed it, I was in on it. When he said duo, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I mean he was probably going to be a Heisman finalist until he got hurt. So
Penn State had 2 freshmen last year that are better than Blake Corum, that are going to be better than what Blake Corum was last year or this year.
But you have to add the whole thing when you're talking about the duo. They still have Donovan Edwards.
No, and
they had the best duo. 1-2.
I understand.
Okay. Just making sure.
A duo, but I'm taking Penn State's duo and Ohio State's duo over Michigan's duo. Donovan Edwards is the best back in the
I don't agree with that. Like 1 and 6.
I'm talking about
still less than 2 and 7 or whatever. All right.
Anyway, listen, we got everybody back. It's going to go. If Ohio State wants to go, they're going to have to go in Ann Arbor to beat them. And nothing's changed for me on that front. I don't care who the quarterback is. They have the best wide receiver in the country, maybe the best 2 wide receivers in the country. I don't know who's going to give them the football. That offensive line's breaking in 3 starters. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be the same tale as the last 2 years. I think Michigan's going to play bully ball. I think Ohio State will do what they want to do, throwing the ball, maybe even running the ball offensively. I don't think the defense is going to stop Michigan. Nothing's changed for me. So going into Ann Arbor, I think Michigan wins. I think they win the Big Ten. I think they beat Wisconsin in the championship game. And I think they go to the college football playoff again.
So I think that the best thing that can happen for the Big Ten is exactly the scenario that Cottrell played out earlier. And I think that is what happens. So I didn't know how to grade that, who would win that side of the conference if all of them went 11-1. I think I'll make it very clear. I think Penn State loses at Ohio State. I think Penn State beats Michigan in Penn State. And I think Ohio State gets their ass handed to them in Michigan again. I truly believe that. I think they'll all go 11-1. I think next year's the year for Penn State. I think they'll finish third in the rankings between the three of them. I think next year's our year, and that's fine. I'll already prelude you and tell you that Penn State wins the Big Ten next year.
Our year.
Yes, our year. That's right. Mark that shit down, bro. Don't make no jokes here. No jokey jokes. Jokey McJoke, man. I got Michigan as the best team in the Big Ten, though. I think they win the game versus Ohio State convincingly, and Michigan again. I think there's going to be quarterback issues in Ohio State. And I think that, when it's all said and done, Michigan will run the ball down their throat. I think that Penn State's defense has at least enough to slow them down. I don't think Ohio State's will. I think they'll get bullied. I think Ohio State will throw the ball over Penn State this year. And I think that they basically all go 11-1. I'll take Michigan to come out the conference, and I think two teams make the college football playoff. Probably be Michigan and Ohio State. So I think that the games become irrelevant, and Michigan gets the tough game to have to play Wisconsin to be the 2 seed in the college football playoff, where Ohio State will do exactly what they did last year, sit at home and be the 4.
I think that the only advantage that Ohio State or Michigan has is I believe Penn State plays Michigan, Ohio State back-to-back weeks, and there's a couple weeks off. What's going to help whoever wins that last game is it's going to be the last week of the year. So they're going to get that boost over Penn State, whoever wins that game.
Penn State plays Ohio State October 21st. They play Michigan November 11th. There's 2 games in between.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other thing, too, that kind of I think plays into Penn State's hands is that really this year they're really playing with house money. All of their key contributors are going to be back. Well, their left tackle is going to be going to the draft next year, but their 2 freshman running backs, Drew Aller, those guys are going to be back for that Penn State team. Not to mention they brought in Dante Cephas from Kent State to be a starting receiver for them. Cephas was getting draft grades last year at Kent State. So you bring in a talent like that to go be a best friend of Drew Aller. And the nice thing, too, is that it wasn't extensive time last year, but Drew Aller was able to play last year in some big minutes for Penn State. And he got the nerves out of the way and didn't miss a beat. I've been clamoring for Drew Aller for it to be a true quarterback competition at Penn State last year when they had Sean Clifford there. I thought Drew Aller was a much better quarterback even as a true freshman. And so this year, I think Drew Aller, and we'll probably talk about it more next week once we get into our college football, preseason talk. But I think Drew Aller is a sneaky dark horse to be in Heisman talks at the end of the season. And that's crazy to say for a guy who hasn't started, a football game yet. But I truly think Drew Aller is a
we'll
very
make all our predictions next week. We'll make all. I want to say respond to this comment because I personally hate 2 teams from the same conference in the playoffs. Just saying, you won't be saying that in 2 years. Wayne, if you don't know, Wayne Curtis is a Texas fan. Of course you don't like 2 teams from the same conference making the college football playoff because 2 teams from the Big 12 are never going to make the college football playoff together. With that being said, you won't be saying that next year or 2 years from now when Texas and Oklahoma enter the SEC and the Big 10 and the SEC basically have 8 of the top 11 teams in college football. It's the truth. Am I lying when I say that?
No, I mean, it'll also be different though too, because it's the last year where we're going to be in the 4-team format.
Yeah.
So
go to 8 next year. So
I don't have to worry about it then. The point being is the goal is to get the best 4 teams in the country. I think we got one of the best games in college football last year by allowing a second team from the Big 10 play in the college football playoff.
Facts.
I mean, when we're looking at last year's college football dynamic, how many games were better than Ohio State, Georgia?
not a lot. I mean, both semifinal games are great. I mean, I don't know how you can really argue that they didn't get it right last year.
Well, both semifinal games were great because Michigan shit the bed. There's no reason in the world Michigan should have lost that game to TCU, and Georgia showed you why.
That is also true.
Michigan made some really stupid mistakes early in that game, and they just kept trying to dig themselves. They had to play overly aggressive to get back in that game, and they were trying to be aggressive, and it kept biting them in the ass. If they played that game 10 times, Michigan should have won it 9. It's just that one time.
I will say though, you mentioned earlier that the winner of the conference has to play Wisconsin and fight for that 2 seed. I will say though, even if you have to fight for that 2 seed, I think no matter what, and we already talked about the SEC, so no matter what, I think Georgia's going to be the 1 seed, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily close. They don't play anybody. I don't see them slipping up at all. Maybe an SEC championship game is somewhat close, but I don't even see that happening. So I don't think there's any way that Georgia's not that number 1 team. And if that's the case, if you end up at 4, that means you have to play Georgia in that first round. So I don't necessarily think even if you win the Big Ten and let's say somehow you lose that championship game, they're not going to put the team that you already beat that's clamoring on to that 4 spot ahead of you. So
dude,
I think that last game of the season
happened though. If they all finished 11-1, and then let's just say Michigan lost to Wisconsin and they had 2 losses, who do you put in the college football playoff? Do you put the 11-1 Ohio State team that Michigan beat? Do you put the 11-1 Penn State team that Penn State beat Michigan? Or do you put the 2-loss team that had to play the extra game in the college football playoff? That would be madness. I'm here for that. That would be the most insane thing to watch.
It would be, right. But I mean, you kind of already saw it last year, though. I mean, I know it's a different conference, and so it's slightly different. But USC was a 2-loss team that went to their championship game and lost, and that's how Ohio State ultimately ended up making the college football playoff. So, based off of precedent, again, it'd be different because these teams have head-to-head matchups. But based off the precedent, I'd imagine if you're that 1-loss team, you're gonna find your way in the playoff.
Think of it this way, though. What if Ohio State runs through the entire conference, gets smashed by Michigan like they have the last 2 years, and then Michigan loses to Wisconsin and have 2 losses? Are you going to put Ohio State in over the team that just kicked their ass that had to play an extra game?
I think there's factors into that. I think it would matter. It would matter what Wisconsin is going in. It would matter where they're ranked. The Big Ten is odd. I think what hurt USC last year is just that conference in general was not ranked highly as the Big Ten. I mean, yeah. you heard it last year. They had the SEC and the Big Ten, and then across the board, everybody in the panel had agreed it was a drop to the other 3 conferences. I think it would depend on what's going on in the Big 12. Again, I don't think the SEC is going to matter because I think Georgia's going to be there, and I don't think they get another team in. It's again, I don't think we should all give away what we're thinking here, but it could be chaos. Listen, chaos is good for us, no matter who's involved and what's going on. Chaos at the end of the year is a good thing for us to be able to discuss and react to and have fun with.
Oh, speaking of chaos, if you've been waiting for it, it is here. The quarterbacks list is here. We're heading to the NFL. We're headed to the NFL. I
gotta throw in something before we leave college football.
Of course you do.
Gotta throw in something before we leave college.
I know
football.
What you're gonna do. Go ahead, get the last word.
We didn't even get any dark horses.
My bad. You're right.
I did.
Yeah, you said Iowa, but I don't think they're necessarily. I mean, I guess dark horse because they're the 5th best team in the conference, but that side of the ledger is just disappointing. But I'll be interested to see what Matt Rule does over in Nebraska. I think it's a situation where Matt Rule, he's got some commits to come over to Nebraska. I don't think they're going to be ready year 1, but I do think, eventually Nebraska can be a school that, returns to being that true blue blood team. And also just with Ohio State here one more time, if Ryan Day loses another game to Michigan, it's crazy to talk about because he doesn't even have 10 losses yet in his career. You're going to have serious talks about him being on the hot seat just because how serious they take that game in Columbus.
Some people wake up on third and think they hit a triple, brother. I don't know what else to say.
We're not adding a little golf talk after the NFL segment.
What are we on? The Tour Championship.
No golf talk. Not today.
I'll do it at the end.
Nebraska will do good to qualify for a bowl game this year. Okay.
And that's fair, but I do agree with Cottrell. I mean, I think Matt Rule, is turned out to be. I think he's going to be that guy who's, a very good to great college coach and just isn't cut out for the NFL. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're 2 completely different animals. But Nebraska fans have been starving for a while, man. If he gets that program back on track, Lincoln, Nebraska, and
bigger pickup, Matt Rule or Luke Fickell?
Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule because of what it means to that program. They had Scott Frost. Obviously, they wanted to return to greatness, didn't quite get there. But Nebraska is that school that has a college football pedigree and that college football background. You bring a name like Matt Rule, who understands the game of football and is a great offensive mind, especially to the college football landscape of things. I think he can bring in recruits with that name, and I think you can ultimately get Nebraska being back that blue blood program. And I think that's going to be huge for that team because if Nebraska is rocking, that's going to be a hard place to play. Time
to get to the NFL.
Yeah, you don't want to go to Lincoln in November if they're good. That is not a game you circle on your schedule as a win. It's just not.
Okay.
June's itching.
I am. NFL quarterbacks list. Pull it up. Let's go. Got to see the list. Got to see it. Got to touch them all. Okay, interesting. Let's. I get my first reaction. I get to look to see where you guys have people. Okay, I see. Okay. All right, let's go. Oh, come on, Cottrell. Really? Can you be any more Homer?
With what?
I don't know what number you're reacting to right now.
7.
Okay.
All right.
Not a bad time. It's like a big jump.
It is. It's a big jump. It's over 2 guys that are clearly better football players. Well,
I'm shocked. You have somebody as high as you do.
Look at your number 3. What are you talking about? Could you be any more Homer?
My number 3 is the runner-up for MVP last year.
Your point? My number 4 won an MVP.
This is a projections list.
Let's get rolling. Start us off with number 10. Cottrell, call me a homer for having the runner-up for MVP of 3.
Yeah, because he's not the third best quarterback in football.
It's a projections list for 2023.
So because he almost won an MVP.
And I think he might be the third best quarterback in football right now.
Okay. 2 years ago, you said he couldn't throw the football and you wanted to see him leave town. So
he's gotten better.
Stop it. We ate that enough.
Anywho, I'm going to go number 10, Justin Fields in Chicago. I think Justin Fields has his breakout year this year. Chicago invested money into their offensive line. They invested draft capital into that offensive line as well. They went out and got him a legitimate receiver 1 option in DJ Moore. And I think that's all the tools that you need to see a Justin Fields breakout year. I don't want to say that he's the same caliber quarterback as Jalen Hurts, but you saw the jump that Jalen Hurts made when A.J. Brown got brought to Philadelphia. And I think you're going to see that same kind of leap in Justin Fields this year, bringing in a guy like DJ Moore. So I think that the Bears are quietly a team to look out for in that NFC North. And I think a big part of that will be because Justin Fields is going to lead the way. So I love Justin Fields this year, and I think he's going to be the 10th best quarterback in football.
Just incredible. Shally, tell us about your number 10. Not on either one of our lists, so take your time.
ECW, baby. So Jared Goff for me comes in at number 10, coming off a great year, 29 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions, third in QBR against the Blitz. I think kind of, a situation where he kind of finally found his home. I think he got to Detroit. I think Dan Campbell toughened him up a little bit and said, this is kind of your shot, kid. Like you fail here, like you're gonna kind of be out of football. And you have to give him credit. He responded. He led Detroit. Detroit easily could have had 11 or 12 wins last year. Lost 2 or 3 games in the last minute of the game. I think Detroit wins that division this year. I narrowly put him on at 10 over Justin Fields, simply because of the year he had last year. I think he's just going. I think with the way that team is trending, I think you have to reward the success. I think Detroit's going to be better than Chicago, and he just eked out Justin Fields for me. I wanted to put Fields on, I did, but I went with Goff. I gave Goff his respect and his flowers. I think he has another solid year. He leads that team to the division championship, and he's number 10 for me.
Well, I got a different division winner for the NFC North. I think it will be. You guys are going to think I'm nuts. I think the NFC North comes down to the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. I think both Minnesota and Detroit fall off a cliff. Both of them. I got Justin Fields number 10. I think that DJ Moore, the addition of him, makes both receivers, Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, better receivers because they don't have to be the number one. They don't have to get number one coverage. They revamped the offensive line. I think they took the best tackle in the entire draft, if I'm being honest with you. I think he becomes an all-pro this year. Justin Fields will 100% take the Jalen Hurts leap this year. He's going to be great, guys. I've told you he's going to be great. I said him and Trevor Lawrence are both going to be superstars in the league the year they came out, and here I am saying it again. They were my top two coming in. They're my top two out of that draft now. Give me Justin Fields at 10. Number 9, I think he takes a huge step forward. I think he gets closer to the form he was in Houston. Deshaun Watson, full offseason. Very talented player. It's just I think that there's a big gap between the top 8 quarterbacks in the league and the next 10. I think Deshaun Watson's at 9, but I think Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields are on that third tier of quarterbacks, and I think that Deshaun Watson has a bounce back year. I think he's definitely top 10 in talent. I have him number 9.
I actually love what Gene just said about the top 8 being in a different tier. I 100% agree. I have Deshaun Watson at number 9 as well. I think he's better this year. I think he's got a full year, in the system, another full off season. Hopefully he took advantage of it. From all reports, he's looked a lot better in camp. He's more familiar with the system, the players around him. Hopefully he can put all his, past, indiscretions behind him and really focus on football this year. I mean, this is a guy that, we were talking about, possibly being an MVP a couple years ago in Houston, keeping them afloat and keeping them in playoff contention on a absolutely terrible football team. So, to Gene's point, the physical talent is there. Where is he mentally? How is he going to play this year? That all remains to be seen. But I do agree with Gene as well. I think he takes that step back forward this year, puts himself in, the upper class of quarterbacks, and I think he has a good year. And I think that leads to success for Cleveland as well. So I have Deshaun Watson, number 9.
Number 9 for me is a guy that probably shocks you because I know a lot of people have him in your top 5. I see Gene has him at 8. Bill has him at 3. And that guy for me is Josh Allen. I think talent-wise, Josh Allen is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, arm talent alone. But you did see him take a step back this past year after Brian Dable was no longer there. You started to see those inconsistencies again with him turning the ball over and things like that. I also think with Stephon Diggs, him and Stephon Diggs not being on the same page, if Stephon Diggs is really trying to force his way out of Buffalo, I think that can also impact Josh Allen's numbers. You saw Josh Allen really start to make that rise in that ascension in the quarterback rankings once they traded for Stephon Diggs. And so if that guy leaves or if they're not on the same page, mixed in with the fact that Brian Dable is no longer there to really hone in on those turnover issues, I think you're going to see a little bit of a dip in Josh Allen. So I still think talent-wise, Josh Allen is, top 10 guy, but I think those numbers start to dip a little bit from where we've seen him the past couple years. Number 8 for me is a guy, again, talent-wise, no doubt about it, top 5 talent in the entire league, and that's Justin Herbert. But I think Brandon Staley is ultimately holding this kid back from greatness. I think he's in a situation where he needs to 100% have an offensive-minded coach be in his corner. I love the addition of Kellen Moore, but at this point too, I think that Brandon Staley still might get in the way of Justin Herbert being great. Now, I fully expect the Chargers to get rid of Brandon Staley at the end of this year. So next year, depending on whatever coach they bring in, I can see Herbert being a lot higher. I love the weapons around him. You got Keenan Allen when healthy, Mike Williams. They drafted Quentin Johnston. He has Eckler this year as well. But ultimately, what it comes down to for me, if you're not on the same page with your coach, I think that you're gonna take a step back. And so all that talent that you have, Justin Herbert, you only land at 8 for me.
Number 8 for me, I'm going with Lamar Jackson from Baltimore. Finally got his deal, so hopefully that's all behind him. He's going to go to Baltimore, or stay in Baltimore, sorry. They went out and got Zay Flowers, drafted Zay Flowers, signed OBJ. he's got to show what he's got now. I think some of the times he gets off the hook a little bit because he did have a lack of weapons. He had to do so much of it himself and use his legs to propel that Baltimore offense. That being said, you have a finally healthy J.K. Dobbins. You have 3 or 4 deep, maybe probably nobody's elite, but very good wide receivers, and one of the probably the second best tight end in football. He has no excuses this year. So I think with all those weapons around him, he could probably run a little bit less, take less hits, stay healthy, and lead what should be a very good Baltimore football team this year. So Lamar Jackson comes in at number 8 for me.
Number 8 for me is Josh Allen, and I contemplated. First of all, I didn't contemplate having him any higher than the 7 above him. I think he's 8th, and I just really think they have a terrible year. If I told you the Buffalo Bills finished last in the AFC East, would you think I'm crazy?
No.
And I'm telling you right now, I think they're in for a really bad season. I see it. I feel it. I think when there's issues with chemistry and there's issues in the locker room with belief in that. I don't think Sean McDermott's the guy. I really don't. I think that the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs thing's not being overblown. I think it's actually being underblown. I think Diggs is doing everything he can to squash that with his Twitter. Josh Allen falls off. I really believe it. And I think that he fell off with Brian Dable last year. He makes too many poor decisions. He turns the ball over way too much. I think the Buffalo Bills take a huge step back. I don't think they're competing for the division, guys. I really don't. I think they could finish 3rd depending on how things play out, but I just have a lot of confidence in what the New England Patriots are going to do. So I really believe the Bills could finish last in this division. That therefore Josh Allen will finish number 8. Number 7 is Aaron Rodgers, and by no fault of his own. Last year he was an omission from my list, rightfully so. This year, I could have put him higher. And the reason I didn't put him higher is because I don't think efficiency outweighs stats. I think that he'll be efficient. I think the New York Jets offense will be efficient, but that's not how they're going to win football games this year. They have Dalvin Cook. They have Breece Hall. They have offensive line issues, so he won't be able to take a ton of time back in the pocket. I think Aaron Rodgers ultimately throws a lot of slants, a lot of quick yards. I think you'll see a lot of 235, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and a Jets 24-13 win. I think their defense is good. I think they rely. And by the way, I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but watching Hard Knocks really makes me envious of a coach like Robert Saleh. He is an incredible guys. And I don't want to go too far in this, when you guys have watched Hard Knocks in the past, you can tell the difference between a bad coach and a good coach. I remember watching Hard Knocks when I loved Rex Ryan on Hard Knocks. I thought he was a good football coach, right? But when we watched Joe Philbin and the Miami Dolphins, did anybody watch that and be like, oh, the Dolphins are going to be great this year? I knew they were going to stink. He was terrible. He was an awful coach. I watch Hard Knocks, and I really love Robert Saleh. I love the culture. I love what he says. I love the motivation. I'm a big Jets guy this year. You'll find that out next week when we do our teams. I have Aaron Rodgers 7, but I think he'll be a very efficient 7.
Did you watch last night's episode?
I didn't get a chance to see it yet.
I did. All right.
Are you? But I did see hold on. But I did see the clip of the Commanders competitors. It was that
5 minutes is incredible. That segment is incredible.
This was the best episode yet.
I'm going to say this. And we're going to talk about it, so I'm not going to get too far into it. I even put, after the first episode, I put something in our group chat. I love Nick Sirianni, what he's turned out to be. But I even said in our group chat, I said, if he isn't our coach, Robert Saleh would be the first person I would want to be the Eagles coach. I don't know how you can't be motivated or play hard for that guy after watching this. I loved last season because I think what Dan Campbell's done with that program, that whole franchise, and turned it around with his mindset and everything is great. Overall, this might be my favorite season of all time. I've loved every minute of the first 3 episodes. But that being said, I'm not going to spend too much time on Aaron Rodgers because I view him this year literally to a T exactly how Gene does. I don't think you're going to have a bunch of 340-yard games with 4 touchdowns. I don't think you need to see that this year. And I agree with Gene. I think they're going to play smart football. If you want to call it efficient, that's a great word for it. He's going to be smart with the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over. He really never has. They have a great running game behind it. And I think they're going to play the football, to fit their strengths, and they're going to beat a lot of teams. Aaron Rodgers is, as much as I dislike him personally, I've never said he's a bad football player. And you watch Hard Knocks too, and the way he explains things, and even the way he's communicated and helped Zach Wilson, and made him he looks at football, completely differently now. I don't know what that bodes for him down the line as a quarterback, but I mean, he already looks like a different kid than he did, his rookie year. So I think Aaron Rodgers has a good year. I agree with Gene. I think he summed it up perfectly. I just don't think at the end of the year, stats wise, he has the numbers to probably be higher on this list, but he's probably going to be the quarterback of a very, very good football team.
Okay.
Number 7 for me, I got Deshaun Watson of the Cleveland Browns. I think Deshaun Watson is going into a year where this is probably going to be the best situation he's ever had his entire career. Now, I understand that, DeAndre Hopkins as a whole is a better receiver than anybody that the Browns have right now. But I fully expect, with Kevin Stefanski being a former coach of the year, him being behind that Browns offensive line, that's one of the top 3 in the league. And he has the luxury of having Nick Chubb, staying right beside him pretty much all game. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of Deshaun Watson, and the fact that, play action is going to be Kevin Stefanski's best friend this upcoming year. So you have a lot of teams that will be, pressed up in the box, and you still have to account for Deshaun Watson as a runner as well. So I think you're going to see Deshaun Watson have that bounce back year. And I think the best thing for him was to get those 6 games and get that NFL speed, under his belt last year. And I fully expect him to be back to form. Now, I don't think he's going to necessarily be 2020 Deshaun Watson, but I think he's going to be just one notch right below that, just because I think this is the best situation that he has had a chance to be in. Number 6 for me, Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Trevor Lawrence is a phenomenal talent. It is nice to see that Doug Peterson is there now, and you finally got to see Trevor Lawrence take that jump. And I think he's going to take another one this upcoming year. You bring in a guy like Calvin Ridley, all the other weapons are back. Christian Kirk gets to go be a number 2 receiver now as opposed to a number 1. Travis Etienne has his footing. You have Evan Ingram, who has a lot of confidence. I think that Jacksonville Jaguars offense will be ready to roll. And Trevor Lawrence has the luxury of playing in a division where, outside of Tennessee, Vrabel will have those Tennessee Titans playing some good defense, but you get 6 games in that division to really just show out. So I think Trevor Lawrence is going to put the league on notice this year, and he's going to put his name ultimately in the discussion of MVPs and really being that superstar quarterback. So love Sunshine this year, and I think he takes that jump.
Sunshine.
I got Trevor Lawrence number 6 as well. I agree with Cottrell. I think he took, the beginnings of a first full step last year, especially in the second half of the season. Got Jacksonville into the playoffs, and quite honestly went to Arrowhead and gave Kansas City all they could handle for most of that game. I think he takes another step forward this year simply because of the personnel around him. Adding Calvin Ridley, as long as his head's screwed on straight and he wants to play football, is a huge weapon to have on the outside. A fully healthy Travis Etienne for a full season, I think, helps. Like you said, with putting Kirk back in the slot, letting him play his natural position, and Evan Ingram, as long as he can stay healthy and stay on the field, I think it's a very dangerous offense. I think they are hands down the best team in that division. I don't think it's close. I think he takes another step forward this year. And I do think he'll get some MVP votes at the end of the year because of the success of that team. So I have him number 6. I toyed with him higher. I went back and forth and did some other things, and ultimately this is where I decided to have him. But, I don't fault anybody if they have him higher.
You went with the safest list. It's very obvious. Your list is the safest one on here. It's like literally off the NFL.com page. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's probably right. It's the safest list on here, though. My number 6 is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, if he doesn't get it right this year, I will drop him off my list. Complaints about running backs, complaints about wide receivers, they have to be squashed, right? You brought in Odell Beckham Jr. You drafted Zay Flowers in the first round, another first-round receiver. You got Mark Andrews. You switched to Todd Monken's scheme, which is very similar to what he ran in Louisville, the spread option to create space. I want to see it. So I have him 6 because I believe you'll see an improved Lamar Jackson. He got paid, so there's no excuses for him sitting out because he has a nagging toe injury. I want to see it. And I have him number 6 for that specific reason. I'm going to take a little time at my number 5 for a specific reason. Number 5, this is the first time I think I've lied on a list. I really give my full projections, but I think I lied on this list. I do. I think Justin Herbert has a great year with Kellen Moore. I think Justin Herbert is a fantastic quarterback. I think he's top 6, top 7 in the NFL. I think statistically, he probably has a better year than 3 and 4. But I'm not doing it again. I'm not doing it again. I'm not putting this guy on a list higher than quarterbacks that are better than him. They're better than him. I'm tired of it. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert's careers can be defined by one single playoff game. One guy had the better receivers, running back room, offensive line, defense, and had a 28-3 lead. The other guy won the football game. Trevor Lawrence is the better quarterback. I'm tired of the Justin Herbert overhype because the throw looks good coming out of his arm. He says Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, it's ridiculous. Quentin Johnson, Austin Eckler. I'm tired of it. The guy still hasn't won a playoff game. And all that gets talked about is Brandon Staley. Yes, Brandon Staley should have been fired. He's not a great head coach, but he's not Urban Meyer. He's not. I'm tired of the Justin Herbert over-exaggeration love. He's not as good as you think he is. He's not better than the 4 quarterbacks that are ahead of him on the list, and I will stand on that statement forever. It's not just the defense, Matthew. Matthew said the defense flopped. Yeah, and how many first downs did he get in the second half? It's not his fault. Oh, here we go. It's not his fault. How many first downs did he get in the second half? I'm tired of it's the deep. What has Justin Herbert done for you guys? I don't know. Like, when you go home at night, do you have a Justin Herbert check sitting in your mouth? There's more Justin Herbert apologists than any quarterback in the history of football. It's baffling. He needed a first down 3 different times coming down the stretch. He needed 1 first down. He didn't get it. Versus a Jags defense. That team had the number 1 pick. It's a joke. Justin Herbert's my number 5. I can't put him any higher than that. I won't do it again.
You good? Done?
Yeah.
I got Jalen Hurts number 5. And the reason I have him number 5 is not because I don't think he's maybe better than some of the guys ahead of him. I think they're going to protect him a little bit more this year. I don't think he's going to run as much. I think he actually might have throwing for a little bit more. But with that offense around him, they're going to use the strength of the offensive line as they continue to do. I don't think they want him to run as much. I think they saw it last year with how banged up he was at the end of the year, missed a game or 2. He's admittedly said he wasn't 100% in the Super Bowl, even though he had a great game. I think they want to keep him more upright and kind of not go down the Lamar Jackson hole with him. So it's not that I don't think the Eagles are going to have a great season, because I think they're going to win that division, and I think they're going to win it running away. I think he's going to have another phenomenal year. I just think his numbers might be a tick under what they were last year, and that's simply because I think they're going to take better care of him. They want to take better care of the football, and like I said, they want to have him full strength come the playoffs. So him being at number 5 is no detriment to the way he's going to play or what kind of year I think he's going to have. I think he's going to be the quarterback of the best team in the NFC. I just think his numbers take a slight tick down. That's the only reason I have him at number 5.
I agree with a lot of what you said, and I also have Jalen Hurts at 5. The one thing that I want to add that you didn't mention is I think that the beginning of the year is going to be something where the Eagles go through a little bit of growing pains. Now, I don't necessarily think that means they lose games necessarily, but I do think there's something to be said about losing both your coordinators. Obviously, Jonathan Gannon doesn't affect what Jalen Hurts does, but losing Shane Steichen I think does. And I do think that having two coordinators leave is going to be something that causes the team to struggle a little bit. Again, I still think Jalen Hurts gets his, but I do think it will take a little bit of time for that Eagles team to get rolling and clicking on all cylinders. I also do think that the Eagles are going to try and protect their franchise quarterback a little bit more this year. I think late in the year, obviously with Jalen Hurts having that injury, wasn't ideal for that team. And so I think, you're going to see less QB design runs. You're still going to see him just because he has that ability, but I think you see less. I do think that the Eagles try and protect Jalen just a little bit more this year. So slight decrease in numbers, but still think talent wise, Jalen Hurts is him. He's on the scene, and he's proven that he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Number 4 for me is Lamar Jackson. Look, I get it. You want to see it. You have questions about his injuries. He's always off the field. Things like that. When he's playing, he's right. And I think Baltimore has shown that, they're going to do what they can to make him happy. He had to hold out with them. They got him his money. They came to terms on a good deal. He was talking about issues with receivers. GM originally came out and said, it's tough to do when you're paying a quarterback so much money. Then they went out and got OBJ and then also got Zay Flowers in the draft. Gene, I'm 100% with you. This is the year where it's put up or shut up. You are a former MVP, and that MVP season, you didn't have the weapons that you have right now. They've invested money into that offensive line, and they've invested draft capital in that offensive line as well. Baltimore has no excuses this year, and I think this is the year where Lamar Jackson ultimately has, a very similar season to what he had that MVP season. So I love Lamar Jackson this year. I do think this is going to be the bounce back year for him, and Todd Monken is going to open up that offense. And I think Zay Flowers is going to show you why he wanted to be the number 1 receiver drafted in this year's class.
Number 4, I have Justin Herbert from the Chargers. I think he has an uptick again this year. He didn't have the horrible year last year that some people like you lead you to believe. You look at his numbers through his first 3 years of his career. It's kind of incredible the numbers he's put up. Has that led to playoff success? No. He's also one guy, 52 guys on a football team. But I also think since he got his money now. He doesn't have that distraction. Did play hurt last year. Only had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field. For the first 14 games. I think they were only on the field for like 2 of the games together. Defense was banged up, but all that being said, he still has to be the leader of the team. He's the face of the franchise. He's got to get them over the hump. He's playing in an incredibly hard division. With the Chiefs, obviously not the Raiders. The Broncos should be better this year. But he's got to get that team in the playoffs, and they do have to win a game. It is the strike against him. Through the first 3 years, he's got, the second most touchdown passes thrown ever. Through the first 3 years, he got the most yardage ever. I don't get too hung up on the record because, if you look at some of the great quarterbacks that put up numbers through their first 3 years and, their team didn't, necessarily have a bunch of success, a couple of them turned out to be really good. So I think Kellen Moore helps him this year, though. I think they open it up a little bit more. But I do agree. I do agree with a little bit of what Gene says. I think it's kind of put up or shut up time. He should be healthy. That entire offense should be healthy. And they did go out on top of that and draft Quentin Nelson as well. So they're going to have 3 really good wide receivers in the field. They have a great running back in Austin Eckler. They have a new, offensive coordinator. With that talent, that team should still be able to succeed, regardless of how much Brandon Staley tries to, interject or get involved. So I think he has a great year. I think he continues to put up monster numbers. That's why I have a number 4 on my list.
So, the whole world debates and argues when me and you don't fight on this show. So it's time for us to fight. It's time for us to fight. Did you say you just said in the beginning of your statement? I didn't want to interrupt you. That he didn't have an awful year as people led you to believe. He had a terrible year last year. He had 25 touchdowns, 14 turnovers. He had a 57 QBR last year. Like, don't lie to yourself and pretend this guy had a top 10 year.
I'm not lying. Who else on this list threw their third, fourth, and fifth receivers for 14 weeks of the year last year? Nobody.
First of all, that's
nobody.
But
it's
you
not.
Can say he didn't have a good year because of conditions.
You said this last year, and then Cottrell looked it up on the show. And until week 9 or 10, Mike Williams or Keenan Allen were not on the field at the same time. Their entire secondary was hurt at some point. Like if you want to say he didn't play well and blame certain things, like the first down thing, you could throw that in his face, and I'll take that. I agree with you. That's embarrassing. But you can't blame every goddamn loss on Justin Herbert, dude.
I don't blame every loss. I just want some to be blamed on him. No. I didn't deserve some of the blame. I have him 5.
That was the most painful 5 I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it's correct. It is. Because he has 3 elite wide receivers. He has an elite pass-catching running back. He has an elite offensive line. He has an elite defense. Yes, it's painful.
Okay.
He should be better.
His elite right tackle, how many games did he play last
year? None. 0.
There you go.
He's going to be there.
Also, he should be. But again, you're blaming Justin Herbert for injuries. He played the half the year with a freaking broken rib, dude. Like if you want to tell that story, that's fine, but then tell the whole goddamn story. Don't pick and choose to paint your narrative. Did he have 14 interceptions? He did. He had 14 interceptions with half an offensive line, backup wide receivers, and a broken freaking rib. Just put all the facts out there then.
Well, that's fine. If you want to say he had a bad season, he had 10 interceptions, 4 fumbles. That's why I said 14 turnovers. Not 14
turnovers. He said turnovers.
I did. No, I'm just making that clear. You said 14 picks. But I will take it a step further than what you said, right? If you said Justin Herbert had a bad year last year because he had a third-string wide receiver, he was playing with cracked ribs, I would have been on board. I'd have been on board.
True.
No, but I would have been on board with that. You said he didn't have as bad as years people like you led you to believe, and they said
it's a different way of saying it. Dude.
I'm saying QBR.
I'm saying in a different way. I'm saying he didn't have that bad of a year when all things are considered. So for him to have that down of a year, as you make it sound, but still have more passing touchdowns in his first 3 seasons than Peyton Manning, he can't be that bad.
The 38-15 from 2 years ago is exactly why we rated him 1 last year, shall we?
Right, because he had everybody on the field all year. So if you want to go to the playoff and say they didn't win a playoff game there, that's fine. That's what he does with a healthy team and some of his ribs not cracked. That proves my point. Thank you. That's what he should do this year. And if he doesn't do it this year, like I just said, this is the year he's got to show it. He has no distractions. He's healthy. Everybody's healthy. He got paid. He's got to show it this year. But I think he will. That's why I have him 4. I literally just said that. I'm not making excuses, but but if you want to say certain bad things about him, that's fine. And some of them are not even saying some of the things you said aren't true, but you're not saying all the extenuating circumstances either. You left all that out. You made everybody believe that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams played every snap last year, that one of the best tackles in the game played every snap last year, that half the defense wasn't hurt all year. Like they signed J.C. Jackson and he played what, 1 quarter of football? Like you left all that out, dude. Like if you're going to paint the picture, then paint the picture.
Because I'm tired of hearing is Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in football when the guy has 0 playoff wins. And I'm like even the year where they were all healthy, 38-15. How many playoff wins did he get that year? Oh wait, he didn't make it. Like I'm tired of the
wasn't his fault.
Okay, it's all not his fault.
Like, dude, it's not that it's all his fault, but he doesn't play defense and he plays. You're giving me the Trevor Lawrence because he made 1 playoff game. Does Trevor Lawrence make it out of the AFC West last year?
No.
You also.
All right, well there you go.
I'm just being the middleman here. Brandon Staley is the reason why the Chargers didn't make the playoffs that year that he had 38-15. If he just doesn't call that time out there and the Raiders don't consider going for it and picking up that first down, the Chargers are in the playoffs.
Okay.
That was after we came on here and all raved about how that drive he went down the field and made those passes. Now he sucks all of a sudden.
He's 5. He doesn't suck. He's just super overrated on most people's lists.
So you put him as a top 5 quarterback in the league, and like if anybody listened to your list, they'd be like Justin Herbert's dog shit.
He's not dog shit. I just have to, since so many people give him roses, I have to make him smell his shit once in a while.
All right, fine. Let's leave it there then. That's fine. Now you can talk about your boy. Let's go.
Oh, so you got through Josh Allen already? I thought. Oh, I'm in Trevor Lawrence.
No,
I'm sorry.
You're Trevor Lawrence.
I'm sorry. My number 4 is a guy that's had one of the greatest college careers at Clemson. Dominated, won a national championship as a true freshman, went back. The guy had Urban Meyer as a coach his first year. Awful. Had the number 1 draft pick and drug his team to the playoffs with, by the way, Christian Kirk is now a number 1 receiver because Trevor Lawrence is there. Guys, Christian Kirk was fighting. I'll never forget this debate. Rondale Moore is going to take snaps away from Christian Kirk. I'll never forget it. Christian Kirk was fighting to get in the slot at Arizona. He's a number 1 receiver now. Zay Jones couldn't see a football field. He's a good receiver now. Evan Ingram was thrown off the Giants. He's a good tight end now. But let's not give any credit to the quarterback that made all that happen. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, you're going to add Calvin Ridley to that offense, and Sunshine continues his ascension forward, and he's my number 4. My number 3, guy was runner-up for MVP last year, and what did they do? They got better. What are we talking about right now? Slim Reaper walks into his 3rd season as a legitimate, one of the top 2, if not best, number 2s in football. A.J. Brown in the middle of his prime catches everything you throw up to him. The offensive line is still elite and the best offensive line in football, and they got better at the running back position. Dallas Goedert's in the middle of his prime. I feel like I'm doing a Jason Kelce Super Bowl celebration because the Philadelphia Eagles offense got better. And then they have Brian Johnson as their offense coordinator, who, I don't know, coached Jalen Hurts since he was like 18 years old. He's going to be their offensive coordinator this year. I love Jalen Hurts this year. I think Jalen Hurts takes another step forward. He's my number 3.
Number 3, I got Josh Allen. I kept him at number 3 because I think, as much as the Diggs thing, I do believe there's more to it than they're putting out in public. I do agree with Gene on that one. I also think Diggs is going to have to play, or he's kind of submarining his career. He's going to kind of become the James Harden of the NFL, and that is not a label that you want. I think they go out and ball out. I do agree with the Dable stuff that you guys said earlier. I also said last year I think it was a lot of growing pains. Josh did make a couple bad decisions. I also think they relied on him too much. They got away from the run too much. I think they have to get back to being a little bit balanced where they were at the beginning of at the end of 2 years ago when the offense looked the absolute best. So I think they make those adjustments this year. I hope they try to run the ball a little bit more. I think he has a bounce back year. If there's one on here that I could probably end up being wrong about, it's probably this one. But I think Josh Allen, I just think he rebounds. I think he goes out and focuses and plays football and has a great year. I do agree that I think Buffalo is going to be in for a dogfight this year. But I think Josh Allen puts up good numbers. So I kept him where I kept him.
Coach, so real quick, I want to give a real MVP. You guys ever watch Red Zone? You guys watched Red Zone before?
Yeah.
Scott Hansen's the real MVP. Let me tell you something right now.
Trains himself to pee.
Yeah, because I didn't. And I can't even get to a 2-hour friggin' podcast without using the bathroom. That's why I walked away a little earlier. Scott Hansen's the MVP. I think that's just wanted to just put that out there. Go ahead. Cottrell is drunk. Rogers at 3. Watson at 7. I'm just reading the comments. Nothing serious. Just the comments.
Hey, it's just RJ. It's not like it's somebody who understands quarterback position. I'm just saying. But I got the bad man in Aaron Rodgers at number 3. You saw what Aaron Rodgers did his last year, his second to last year in Green Bay, his last year with Nathaniel Hackett as his OC. Obviously, those two are reunited now. He has a true number 1 option again in Garrett Wilson. And, he's on a team with the Jets that has a phenomenal defense. I fully expect the Jets to be a top 10 defense this upcoming year. And with that means you're going to get turnovers. You're going to get teams off the field early, and you're going to get the ball back into your offense's hands. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a big rebound year. I think you're going to see Aaron Rodgers turn back to that 2021 Aaron Rodgers form. You have all of his other weapons from Green Bay, his Green Bay misfits and Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard. You got your gadget guy, Mecole Hardman, with the Jets as well. I think he has plenty of weapons to throw the ball to. Not to mention, you're going to have a backfield combo of Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall as well. I think Aaron Rodgers has a 4,500-yard year. I can see some of his games being rather pedestrian. Gene mentioned 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. But I also see the big games being there as well, just because of the amount of talent that they have. And they now have that ability to be in shootouts with teams. So love Aaron Rodgers this year. I think he's gonna be in that conversation of MVP towards the end of the year. Number 2 for me, consensus number 2 across the board, Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals. I think he's in a great spot. Obviously now the chemistry that he has with his receiving core, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. They added in a tight end this year. They got a better tight end now. Zach Taylor is in I believe this is his 4th year coaching now. And clearly that offense has everything rolling. You also add in a guy like Orlando Brown to protect Joe Burrow's backside as well. I don't see why Joe Burrow would take a step back. It makes no sense to me why he would. And, he's in the peak of his career at this point. So I think Joe Burrow stays at that number 2 spot. I think the top 2 are the top 2. There's no way around it. But, when you got the guy at 1 who's a generational talent, 2 is just going to be the best spot for you.
I'm not going to disagree with anything that Cottrell just said. Joe Burrow is number 2 for me as well. The biggest thing you need to see about him is when you look at his numbers and how he proceeds and how well he plays in the 3rd and 4th quarters of football games. The later the game goes and the tighter it is, the bigger the spot, the better he plays. 3rd and 4th quarter QBR. He's got the best touchdown interception ratio in the 4th quarter for balls thrown more than 20 yards in the air. His numbers are just incredible. And I agree with Cottrell. If you don't have a generational quarterback at 1, this guy's number 1 on everybody's list. He's still got 3 good wide receivers. Joe Mixon's back at the running back position. They should be right there in the thick of it like they always are. So, I think he has another great year. I'm hoping the calf thing isn't serious. I've seen him move around. He's been in practice and going through things. He looks okay. I just hope it's something that doesn't rear its ugly head again later in the season or, becomes a nagging thing. He's also 2nd QBR when he's outside the pocket. The dude's just unflappable. Everything about him is cool, calm, and collected. You can't ask for anything more out of your quarterback. So Cincinnati's lucky to have him. I have Joe Burrow number 2.
Well, I have Joe Burrow number 2 because he's the 2nd best quarterback in football. Joe Burrow has great receivers, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. And I think that Joe Burrow, the only reason I can't put him number 1 is because you have a guy that's going to be fighting for the GOAT at number 1 in Patrick Mahomes. Guy's just different, does it with anything. You know, throw Travis Kelce. Could you imagine Patrick Mahomes with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd? Like, I just can't. I can't see that. Joe Burrow is incredible. Joe Cool is just continuously getting better from LSU to now. Got to give him all the credit in the world, but I can't put him number 1 when you have the baby GOAT. We'll call him the baby GOAT. The future GOAT. Could be the future GOAT. We don't know. We don't know yet. But I'm telling you right now, Patrick Mahomes is different. He continues to show you that. I got Patrick Mahomes number 1. Nothing against my boy, jump off Joe Beasy, who, by the way, didn't get off the train. Didn't get off the Joe Burrow train. 2 years ago, everybody's off the Joe Burrow train. Didn't get off Joe Burrow train. Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, top 2 quarterbacks in football. What's up, Dez? Yeah, shall we?
Yeah, I'm not going to dwell on this. I mean, the guy's got 2 rings already. He's been to 3. He is the best quarterback of this generation. He just does things that nobody else can do. And I don't know how better to say that. If you watch the quarterback show on Netflix, puts his work in, does his homework, doesn't take it for granted. The dude works hard. And that's what you got to do to stay at that level. I think he's a little bit more of a dick than I thought he was personally, but football wise, the dude's just on a different level. He just operates on a different plane. It's unanimous number one across the board. Any show you watch in the NFL, they're all going to have him number one on their list. He's just special. He's a generational talent. Enjoy watching him while you can, because this is not a type of guy that you see, all the time. So, got to give him all his roses, give him all his credit. I can't say enough good things about him. So, Patrick Mahomes, number one.
Bro, we're not doing a bottom 10 quarterbacks list, as. Yes, where Russell Wilson was. Did you watch that preseason game? It looked terrible.
I think they'll get that ironed out, though. I think he has a better year than he did last year. I mean, that's hard not to do.
Kind of hard not to.
I think Denver's better this year.
I agree.
And then number one for me, Patrick Mahomes, yet again. I mean, you guys have already said everything you can say about Patrick Mahomes. Crazy part about him is been in the league 5 years. He could, I think, in my opinion, he could retire tomorrow and have a legitimate claim to be a Hall of Famer. 2 MVPs already, 2 Super Bowl championships, been to the division championship five times at this point, been in 3 Super Bowls. He already has, a career that a lot of greats don't even have under their belts yet. So I love his game, knowing what he can do without, the marquee receivers. You thought Tyreek Hill left, that he would take a step back. He went out there and he won MVP. So Patrick Mahomes is in a league of his own. And, I don't know how – obviously you can have your dark horses, things like that, odds-wise, people that you love. But if Patrick Mahomes is healthy and he plays 17 games this upcoming year, I don't know how he doesn't win MVP again this year.
Broncos country, let's cry. Guys, good quarterback list, fun debate. I want to talk a little NFL action. Couple things. Number one, San Francisco 49ers officially named Sam Darnold as their backup quarterback, putting Trey Lance as the third string quarterback, and talking about trade rumors for Trey Lance. I have a couple thoughts on this. So before I go, Cottrell, what are your thoughts on Sam Darnold being named the backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers? And what are your thoughts on Trey Lance's next landing spot, or if he does get moved?
Okay, so couple thoughts on that is, first one being, I don't necessarily think that means that Sam Darnold outperformed Trey Lance. I think that could be a situation where the job was pretty close. And if you're putting all your cards in Brock Purdy, you don't want that inkling of a backup quarterback and a guy like Trey Lance, who was a former 3rd round pick who you moved a lot of draft capital for, just hanging around in the balance. Now, also with that said, even if Trey Lance was right there, with Sam Darnold, if he's not going to be your guy, you need to move him now and still try to get something for him. There are other teams that are in limbo right now, or who are going to be going towards limbo, who might give you a little bit more than what you might expect just by having them sit on your bench. So I think this was a good decision by the 49ers if they truly feel like Trey Lance isn't going to be that guy. And I would try to get him shipped out as quick as possible. I think you have teams like the Commanders. I know they named their starter as Sam Howell already, but I think that could be a team that gets interesting. I also think the Atlanta Falcons is a team that you have really nothing to lose. I think you could take a flyer on a guy like Trey Lance, because at least Trey Lance can throw the ball, and he is still on that rookie deal. So I think the 49ers will have some suitors for Trey Lance, but I also think it's smart to cut bait, while you still can.
I think there's probably a little something in the third string theory that they don't want him hanging around and have people calling for him to play. But I also think if you look at Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold, they're kind of the same kind of quarterback, and I think if he's going with Brock Purdy, that they want that system to stay the same if Sam Darnold has to play. I'm not saying I would do that. Sam Darnold just hasn't shown me enough to, be the guy that, if Brock Purdy goes down, that I'm trusting him to keep that team, in line and continue to win games, until Brock Purdy can come back. That being said, though, I think Trey Lance just hasn't shown them the consistency enough that they trust him. Kyle runs, kind of, a complicated offense. And I just don't think he's grasped it yet. I think he's probably got a little bit of a confidence issue because, you see a team trade up for you and you think you're going to be the guy and then you get hurt, which sucked. But it's part of football. That being said, though, I agree with Cottrell. If I'm Atlanta, I'm on the phone. I think if you can get him, take a flyer on him. I don't think it's going to cost you a ton, and have him with that young nucleus of Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. Now, if he turns out to be good, I mean, you get a diamond in the rough, and you have 4 young guys at skill positions that are just going to grow together and get better and better. I don't care what Atlanta says. Desmond Ridder is not the answer there. They can say whatever they want publicly and back the kid and do all that. And I get it. That's what you have to do. Like I fully get the semantics of it. He's not the guy though. So, I mean, Atlanta's probably going to be bad this year. If you go get Trey Lance and he works out, that's you can spend a high draft pick next year on somebody not a quarterback. So, you can make your football team better somewhere else. So, I love him going to Atlanta. I hope he doesn't go to Washington because that would suck. But for him, I mean, I could care less if he goes there. But, I think Atlanta's the perfect fit for him. As soon as I heard that he might be available, that was the first thing that popped in my head.
Just to let you know, I've officially today jumped off the Kyle Shanahan bandwagon. He's a moron, right? And I've given Kyle Shanahan a ton of credit for being one of the most smart-minded offensive coaches in football. He's an idiot. I'm just going to let you know that right now. So I want to ask you guys a question. Let's play a fun game real quick. Who do you think had more in total passing attempts? Total passing attempts. Trey Lance's entire high school, college, NFL career, all of them combined, all those passing attempts combined, or Geno Smith last year?
Probably Geno if you're bringing it up.
Geno Smith had 572 passing attempts last year, plus another 29 in the playoff game, bringing you to 601. Trey Lance has had 99 passes in high school, 318 passes in college, 72 in the NFL preseason, and 102 in the NFL regular season. So he's had a combined, I'm just doing quick math here, correct me if I'm wrong, 420, 519 plus 72 brings us to a total of 591 in his career. And we're just we give him all these draft picks to move up. And we want to go with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, 21-34 as an NFL starter, 61 touchdowns to 55 interceptions, a QBR in the 50s, a quarterback rating. QBR's in the 40s for his career. I apologize. Sorry, I gave him too much credit.
I'd say if he's in the high 50s, it's not that bad.
What'd you say?
I'd say if he's in the high 50s, that wouldn't be that bad.
No, he's in the 40s, mid-40s QBR.
I believe that.
With a quarterback rating of 73 for his career. That's what we're going with as our backup quarterback. Listen, if Brock Purdy goes down, you think Kyle Shanahan comparing Sam Darnold to Steve Young is one of the most asinine comments I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll take it a step forward, right? I'll take it a step forward. I think Kyle Shanahan always wants to be the star of his own show. I think by him making Brock Purdy the starting quarterback, he can go, look what I did with Mr. Irrelevant. Look what I did. By him saying with Sam Darnold as their backup quarterback, I can rejuvenate Sam Darnold. That's what I can do because I'm Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan has now officially cost his teams 2 Super Bowls. One with the Atlanta Falcons, one with the San Francisco 49ers.
I don't think you can say that yet.
Why? Why can't I say he cost his team 2 Super Bowls?
Well, because you were the biggest Mr. Anti-Brock Purdy guy, and then he went out and won a bunch of games and got to the NFC Championship game. If that's who plays well within the system, that's his choice.
Yeah.
I think if you want to know what's telling about this, if you're being 100% honest, you want to play devil's advocate, it's the fact that we're still talking about Trey Lance possibly not winning the backup spot. So if he's not even that good enough to compete for the starting spot, that tells you where Trey Lance really is. Now, would I trade him? No, I would stash him. But I don't know what Trey Lance is saying behind the scenes. I don't know what his agent's saying behind the scenes. But that being said, that's telling in its own right. If he's not even in competition for the starting job, either Kyle Shanahan's that off or Trey Lance just hasn't been that good. Have we seen the So, I mean, all right, well, so I mean, you
used all your draft picks. You used all your eggs to move up and get him. You were that sure about him, and then after an ACL tear.
And again, they have egg on their face for that if it ends up
being. And by the way, Bill, you said I couldn't say Kyle Shanahan has cost his team 2 Super Bowls. Why can't I say that?
So
that's the question I asked you.
You're talking about the Atlanta one. Which San Francisco one are you talking about?
The one where it was 10-10 with 1:53 left in the half, and they ran the clock out instead of trying to score versus Kansas City. They had a 20-10 lead over Kansas City and blew that. That one I'm talking about. That one. Kyle Shanahan has now officially cost his team 2 Super Bowls. The Atlanta one's obvious.
The Atlanta one's easy, but they lost the guy that made a comeback and did the same thing against the Eagles last year. The guy that's the best quarterback in football. Like a 10-point lead to Patrick Mahomes. Like they weren't up 24-3, bro. Like they lost 20. They were up 20-10 and lost to Patrick Mahomes.
When it was 10-10, they didn't try to score, Bill. They tried running the clock out and to get to halftime. You wouldn't give that a coaching issue?
I give you a coaching issue, but I also
lose them the game.
Do you trust Jimmy Garoppolo to go out there and be that guy to not make a mistake? Because if he makes a mistake and you give the ball back to Kansas City and you go in a half, let's say down 7. Look, I'm all of the mantra: no risk it, no biscuit. So I'm going to try to put points out there. I'm playing to win the Super Bowl. I'm not playing to not lose the Super Bowl. So I'm 100% on your side.
There's been
100%.
There's been 3 coaches that took their teams to the Super Bowl in that little span. It was Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Doug Peterson, and only one of them had the balls to win it. Just calling it like it is, and he had the balls to win it because on 4th and 2, 4th and goal, he went for it in the first half to score a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal. That's why. Because
I get it, but at the end of the day, too, it doesn't mean he doesn't evaluate talent.
Oh, he's a great talent evaluator.
Okay, so maybe he's right about Trey Lance.
He could be. You just drafted. That's not the point. The point is we know what we have in Sam Darnold.
It is the point.
But the thing is though, Gene, if you know what you have in Sam Darnold, and I'm not saying Sam Darnold is a great talent by any means.
Nobody's a Sam Darnold guy here.
Let's say
Kyle Shanahan is.
Let's say if Kyle Shanahan thinks that Sam Darnold can be as good as what Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold could be as good as what Jimmy G was last year or his career in San Francisco, why would you keep around a guy like Trey Lance who every time Brock Purdy makes a mistake, you're going to have that fan base clamoring for, Trey Lance to be. You're going to have guys in the locker room doubting Brock Purdy, things like that. Like I think at this point, if you're saying that Brock Purdy is going to be your franchise guy moving forward and Trey Lance isn't even close to competing for that spot, why wouldn't you try to move out a guy like Trey Lance?
I got news for you, bro. I got news for you, and I got news for you. Week 1, my best pick of the year will be the Pittsburgh Steelers stomping a mud hole. I might not even start Christian McCaffrey in my fantasy league because the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to kick their ass week 1. Book it. I will put whatever you want on it. Put the farm on it. Steelers destroy 49ers. Brock Purdy's going to have a damn reality check this year when there's a book out on him. And I'm telling you right now, that team is making a poor decision by closing a book on a guy that hasn't had one full NFL season. You drafted him number 3. You didn't allow him to play, and you got given him one full NFL season. In his career, I'm not talking about college, pros, high school. He hasn't thrown the ball 600 times in competitive football. That's crazy to just close the book on the guy. For Mr. Irrelevant, some guy that you didn't believe in. They did not believe. Yo, Alex, I will put whatever you want on it. You can bet me anything you want.
How many years, though, and how much time are you going to invest in that guy being number 3. Right now, if you're the 49ers, this is the most open your championship window is going to be. You have all the pieces there. You can't just, hold Trey Lance's hand until he's ready to go. If Brock Purdy is your guy and you think that Brock Purdy can help you win a Super Bowl within the next 2 years, then he's going to be your guy. You're not going to see Trey Lance until he's on his 5th year at that point on his rookie deal. Like, I just don't know why it would make sense to hold on to a guy like Trey Lance if you truly don't know when you're going to have him out there on the field. Why?
I just hope he goes
to go to a different team.
I just hope he goes to a good organization that will put the resources behind him and allow him to play football. And then we can make the decision on who he is.
What resources doesn't he have in San Fran?
Well, he doesn't have a coach that believes him. He didn't have a system that was built around him.
Well,
let
me
finish my point. You asked me a question.
All right, go ahead.
Say, Bill, don't. Because Trey Lance hasn't had time. I think Trey Lance has been put in the absolute worst situation possible.
You asked me a question, and I want to answer the question. Most rookie quarterbacks that get drafted top 5 in the NFL have an offensive coordinator and a system built around their skill set and their talent. Kyle Shanahan was never going to do that, which is why I thought they should have drafted Justin Fields in the first place. I knew when the Jets made the mistake of drafting Zach Wilson that they should draft a quarterback that would be good for Kyle Shanahan's system. Even the Mac Jones lovers would have been a better quarterback for that system than Trey Lance. They didn't build a system around him. They have no belief in him, and he's walking into an opportunity that's win now when he hadn't thrown the ball 400 times in his career. It's a terrible situation.
Okay, so let's all agree that he needs to develop more.
Correct.
Nobody's writing him off. Okay, you are in a win now. They're not giving him a year with this team that is the top 3 in rosters. Like, no argument there. They have a top 3 roster in the NFL.
Yes.
You're not giving that kid a year to go out there and get 500 pass attempts in and figure it out and blow a year of a window to win a Super Bowl. You're not doing it.
So my question would be, why would you not let him sit as a backup quarterback this year, not bring in Sam Darnold, have him a whole year in the system, and if Brock Purdy is there? But that's my point. They drafted him 3rd, Bill. So why bring in Sam Darnold?
I'm not agreeing with the Sam thing, but that being said, it's telling to know what's going on behind the scenes and what he's doing in practice if he's not even competing for the starting spot. You can't gloss over that. If he was playing that well, Sam Darnold doesn't even matter, bro, because he would start. If he's that bad at practice.
You also have to realize that Trey Lance is coming off of an ACL injury, so that also factors into it. It could be Trey Lance coming into that 49ers organization. He was a good athlete. Now, I'm not saying he was running all over the place, but he was a good athlete. If they realize that, mobility-wise, he's not where he needs to be, that's ultimately why they brought in a guy like Sam Darnold, because they were like, hey, if Trey Lance isn't ready to go week 1, Brock Purdy's elbow's still not right, we got to have somebody that we could trot out there and have an inkling of confidence in.
That's the most fair point I've heard. I appreciate that point.
And you also brought up another good thing with when they came up to draft 3, we all thought they were taking Justin Fields because we all agreed that Trey Lance was a project.
Yeah.
Like he was good.
I still agree with that, but I want him to be in a place where he can develop.
And he still could be there. Again, dude, I think Brock Purdy played great last year. He might have a good year this year. I don't think he's their long-term answer. We all know Sam Darnold is not the long-term answer. So, again, to Cottrell's point that he just made, he's coming off an ACL tear. The worst thing you could do is throw him in there on a team that's ready to win and have that pressure from the locker room if he doesn't have a good year, coming off a major injury and ruin the kid. So if he doesn't play this year and he keeps getting better at practice, and then he goes out next year with what's going to be the same roster, if not better, with more experience with some of the young guys, and he wins the starting job, this last 10 minutes is silly. Like, he's going to be where we all thought he was going to be anyway.
I really just want him to get the opportunity. I hope the 49ers do trade him. I just wish Kyle Shanahan would go out to the media and the public and be like, listen, due to his injury, we didn't get the chance to develop him the right way. We're in a win-now situation. We feel like Brock gives us the best chance to win. So that's why we're moving on from Trey Lance. That's what he owes the kid for moving up and drafting him at 3.
I 100% agree with that. And I think, Trey Lance is in one of those unique positions that really no one has, at least in my recent memory, has been in that position where a team that drafts 3 is normally in that rebuilding mode, and you have that year to sit and you have that year to learn if they have a bridge quarterback in that system. But the 49ers have been all systems go. And with him having that injury and Brock Purdy having the chance to shine like that, I just think that that's a bad hand that was dealt to Trey Lance. Do I still think he can develop? I 100% think he still can be that guy. But if I'm the 49ers too, I don't want that distraction being on my team. And I'm not saying it as like a diss to Trey Lance, but I don't want the guy who I think should be our starter to be looking over his shoulder every single bad pass, every single interception, things like that, when I'm trying to put together a team that's ultimate goal is to go out there and win a championship.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to ask you guys a question. What do you think the ceiling is for Brock Purdy? You think he'll be a top 10 quarterback in the league ever?
With Kyle Shanahan, I think his ceiling is probably like 15, 14.
But it's all – yeah, I agree. It's the reality of that situation is if that is what he plays to, that they get a couple breaks.
I don't want to delete one of the worst years I watched in college football, and the reason he was drafted last because of how awful he looked versus Iowa, and when Iowa State got beat 13-3. I don't want to delete that out of my memory because he played well within Kyle Shanahan's system when nobody had any friggin' tape on him.
No, I mean I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, if Brock Purdy doesn't necessarily have to go out there and be a top 10 quarterback or be a top 5 quarterback for him to be the franchise quarterback.
The ceiling for his career, though. Do you think he'll ever be a top 10 quarterback?
No, but that's what we're saying. He doesn't have to be.
I was going to say, my final point is that if he wins a Super Bowl, none of this matters. Like, it doesn't matter if he's a top 10 guy. It doesn't matter, where he was at for his career. If he keeps the 49ers competitive, they win 1 Super Bowl, they win two Super Bowls in the duration that he's the 49ers quarterback. It doesn't matter where you end up because he's the guy that ran Kyle Shanahan's system and ultimately, helped them win a championship.
Well, Seahawks fans should be really happy this year because I'm telling you right now, the Seattle Seahawks just got a much better chance of winning the NFC West. I truly believe that, and we'll talk about that more next week. I got one more question for you guys, NFL, that before we move on to You Got to Be Kidding Me. Jonathan Taylor has now been allowed to seek a trade. Me and Cottrell spoke about this earlier, but I feel like it'd be wrong if we didn't put the content out on paper. Me and Cottrell agree with the thought process. Before me and Cottrell give our thought, I haven't heard your opinion, Bill. What's your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor? Do you think he'll get traded? And what's your thought process of everything that's going on with Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis?
I mean, it's just a byproduct of the whole running back thing. I mean, and we talked about that earlier. Then you factor in, Irsay's dumbass into this equation. It gets worse. I don't think he gets traded because I think it's too easy for Irsay and them to sit there and be like, well, we didn't get offered anything that we want to trade him. And then it puts all the weight back on Jonathan Taylor. Now, I think if somebody does blow them out of the water with the offer, then maybe they do trade him because, I mean, they're clearly not going to pay him. So, I guess it gets real interesting at that point. But I think he's in a situation where he's also, he's not going to get traded before the beginning of the season. I don't believe that. So he's going to have to get him. If he's healthy, he's got to get on the field and at least show that he's healthy. And then he can play at that high level if he really wants to get out of off that team. Okay. Again, I think Irsay complicates this whole thing because I think he's just gonna dig in and just say, nobody, he's a franchise running back and that's how we value him. And I mean, ultimately, it's pretty much what he is. But he's gonna say that nobody offered them value for him, and he just won't trade him. Like he's just gonna be able to say, he's gonna be that I told you so guy and say that he won. That's what he's gonna do.
Okay, so I think that, you know what, Cottrell, let me just not outdo your shine. Go ahead, Cottrell, because we agree.
Yeah, so I mean, just hearing the way that the information all broke down, my immediate reaction was Jim Irsay and Jonathan Taylor's camp. They had a conversation, and they were like, "Hey, JT, if you want to get traded so bad, go ahead. We're going to give you all the permission in the world to talk to whatever teams that you want to. But we're going to tell you this right now. The only way we're trading you is if we get first round and probably and some from the other team that you're looking to go to. So if you find that, no problem. We have no issues shipping you off to that team. But once if you don't have that, then you're gonna be a Colt. And I think Jim Irsay and company, they know behind the scenes that that's just not in the cards for a running back at this point. You saw McCaffrey get traded last year, and there were no first round picks that exchanged hands. And so Jonathan Taylor, I get it. He is younger than McCaffrey, and he doesn't necessarily have the injury history that McCaffrey does. But at this point in time, the NFL is showing you that they don't necessarily value running backs. And so as the years go on, Jonathan Taylor's shelf life isn't going to be crazy. He has 2 years left on his rookie deal. And so I don't know if you have any teams that are going to be willing to move a first-round pick for a guy like Jonathan Taylor. So I think Jim Irsay just wanted to put the ball in JT's court, kind of look like the good guy in the media. But behind the scenes, he knows that the Colts aren't going to get an offer that's going to, ultimately make them want to trade Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, I think the move is to Chicago. I really do. I agree with you. We agree 100%. I think Irsay put that out there to be like, no one's going to offer you what we want for you. But I think the move is to Chicago. Look, I don't look at cap space this year, right? Cap space is, our teams are clamoring for cap space because they want to be able to make their team as competitive as possible. Next year, the Bears have $70 million in cap space. So you can afford to front load a contract for Jonathan Taylor and sign him at 25 years old. You can do that. Dalvin Cook's 28. You can front load the contract before you have to pay Justin Fields. If I'm the Chicago Bears, why would I not want to get Jonathan Taylor in there? And I could overpay him. I have the luxury and the ability to overpay him, front load the contract. So even if he does tamper off 3 years from now, it's okay. The issue is the Bears don't necessarily have the draft capital to give up to get Jonathan Taylor. No team's giving a first-round draft pick for a running back. The Colts asking for that's just asinine. I think the Bears could get away with it with a 3rd and 5th. I really do.
I can see they could, but I don't know. I think Jim Irsay is that petty of an owner. He's like, hey, you're in the same playing field as a guy like McCaffrey. You were the Russian champ, 2 years ago. Like, you're in the prime of your career. We're going to need at least that draft capital, if not a first-round pick.
By the way, and I think he gets protected publicly that way, because if he goes, yeah, they offered us a 3rd and a 5th, like, would you want us to trade Jonathan Taylor for a 3rd and a 5th? And the consensus on that's going to be no. And it's kind of like you said, like, he gets to go out and talk to all these teams now, and then it's going to kind of be like a reality check to some degree that, nobody's going to offer what he probably even internally thinks he's worth. And then, Irsay gets to play that, the fan card, and he looks right, and again, we all know behind the scenes that he's not, he's not being the stand-up guy, like he's being petty. But if that's the way it all plays out, he ends up looking like the good guy here.
By the way, I'll tell you teams that can't trade for him. I love looking at you guys. How often do you guys look at Spot Rack? I love Spot Rack. The salary cap situation.
I do.
I do it a lot for like contracts and stuff.
I have recently because my Madden league is starting back up here soon. I like to see where I can go and have the flexibility.
Then this answer. What team has the most cap, the least cap space next year?
I believe it's the Kansas City Chiefs.
Nope. It is the Cleveland Browns. They are $85.6 million over the cap next year.
Oh, you're talking about next season. Okay.
Yeah, 2024.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Anything else you guys want to bring up NFL before we move into You Got to Be Kidding Me?
No, I mean, we touched on it earlier, but if you're not watching Hard Knocks, watch it.
It's great.
Again, I think it's – you didn't even see last night yet. I think it's amazing. I think – again, I'm not ever going to probably like Aaron Rodgers as a person per se, but listening to him talk and just how much he knows about football and the way he breaks stuff down, it's great. And Robert Saleh is incredible. Last night's episode is amazing.
Aaron Rodgers definitely has And I mean, I haven't. You know, Shally is our resident Aaron Rodgers hater, and for good reason. But seeing him on Hard Knocks and seeing how um, Zach Wilson has really handled, being demoted to the backup quarterback spot, things like that. I mean, it's been kind of cool to watch, and you're starting to see Zach Wilson in these preseason games pick up on a little bit of the Aaron Rodgers mannerisms and play fakes and things like that. So it's definitely been cool to see.
Okay, well, let's move on to You Got to Be Kidding Me, Cottrell. We'll lead off with you as always, my friend.
Well, this week I don't necessarily have anything great. Biggest one, I guess that I'm going to go with is just the performances so far. Well, I shouldn't say performances. Couple performances in general, though, from the World Championships over in Budapest for track and field. So right now, USA has actually been holding their own in a lot of events. You have Noah Lyles being the champion of the 100 on the men's side, Sha'Carri Richardson being champion on the women's side. But what was disappointing for me was just watching these guys compete yesterday in the men's 800 meter, and none of them were understanding of what the pace needed to be going out there. You had three guys, one of them being Clayton Murphy, who was a guy that got the bronze medal just a year ago in the Olympic Games, and just a couple years ago in the Olympic Games. And he went out there and he laid an egg, and so did the rest of Team USA in that race. So for me, USA 800 meter men's team just not showing up to compete and be competitive like how every other event has done so far for me.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Love it. I love it, Cottrell. You're always our guy, our resident track and field guy. Shally.
I'm going kind of a silly one this week. I'm going to go with Pete Alonso from the New York Mets. Mr. Meathead himself. They were playing the Cardinals late last week. They just called up their star rookie, Mason Wynn. Got his first hit. Ball went over to first base. Everybody was screaming, hey, take the ball out of play, because it was his first hit. Normally, you just throw it across the field to the other team's dugout so they can write on it and get it authenticated. This dope threw it over the screen to the fans. It threw away the kid's first base hit ball. Sorry. All ended up well because all the fans started screaming, give it back. Somebody from the Cardinals got over there and got the ball, and Mason Wynn got his baseball back in the dugout. But to be that brain dead, to not understand the situation, when he was actually interviewed about it earlier in the day, is just crazy to me. I will give him credit. He totally owned it after the game. He said he felt like crap and went over, apologized to him personally. But just not even knowing what the hell's going on or anything. It was just funny to watch. So this week for me, it's Pete Alonso.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Mine is going to be me going against my own grain and what I've wanted for years. I've been against robot umpires. I've been against that for a while. I think it's not really a great overall circumstance, but I can't wait for the robot umpires to get here. They can't get here quick enough. This week, Major League umpires missed 1,032 calls, including 58 strikeouts. 1,038 calls was the most this season for one single week. 1,032 calls, 58 strikeouts. They are getting more and more egregious, inches and inches and inches to almost a foot off the strike zone calls that are being made. They have the umpires union that won't allow them to replace bad umpires, and I can't deal with it anymore. Give me the robot umps. I'm tired of players being ejected from games because you can't deal with a player arguing with you on a blown call that you missed by a foot. There's got to be a way to correct it. I'm tired of it. If Angel Hernandez got fired today, then that's the best news I've heard all year. So if that happened, that would be amazing. He's missed an incredible amount of calls. There's so many umpires that are bad in Major League Baseball. And listen, Doug Eddings is terrible. He has the second lowest correct call rate all season. So if Angel Hernandez is bad, he's got an 84.9% correct call rate. I don't even know how that's possible. And anybody that says, well, if you don't want to umpire, you got to try it yourself. I have tried it. I've done it for 3 years. I know umpiring slow pitch softball isn't as hard as umpiring Major League Baseball, But if you have two eyes and you pay attention, you can't be that bad at it. So for this week, Major League umpires.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
I mean, it's incredibly difficult, and I will say this. But I mean, I've made no bones about it how much of a purist I am about baseball, and I'm over it. I think you hit on a couple of the really key things. I'm tired of watching players get thrown out when they're right because the umpires don't want to get shown up. I'm over that. And listen, I mean, the game happens at an insane pace. Like everybody thinks baseball is a slow game, and to the naked eye, it is. But when you're watching guys run 20 miles an hour compared to a ball being thrown 92 across the diamond, it's bang, bang. It's human error. It's going to happen. They've now allowed replay in on the bases to help those umpires out in case they get it wrong. Mistakes are going to happen. Give the batters the chance to challenge. That's what they do with the robot umps. It's a robot strike zone. And if they feel the umpire got it right, they're allowed to challenge it right away. And then they look at it and they correct it if it's wrong, or they keep going. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, these guys throw harder and harder. The ball moves more and more. And the biggest thing I'm glad you touched on is the Major League Umpire Union is going to have to give here. Listen, I just explained to you why it's hard. You're watching baseballs being thrown 98 miles an hour with movement. And then you got to judge in a second if it was over the plate and if it was above a knee or whatever. It's an extremely difficult job to do. Nobody's debating that. But that being said, if I explain that job task to you, would you go out and hire a bunch of 70-year-old guys to do it? Because you wouldn't. If I didn't tell you it was umpiring, I said, I need to hire somebody that has good vision and that can see things move at a very fast pace and judge where they were. And if I gave you 3 70-year-old candidates, you wouldn't hire any of them because that job is not designed to be done by a 70-year-old. It's just not. And again, if you have all these young umpires that are trying to get into the game, let them in, dude. You just Gene gave you the numbers. The numbers are horrible, and they're getting worse by the week. The union just doesn't have a leg to stand on anymore. And it's not like, again, it's not like you're missing by an inch. Like they're calling guys down in strikes that the balls are missing by 6 inches, and that doesn't sound. It doesn't. It doesn't sound like a lot. Yeah. It doesn't sound like a lot.
Football is a game of inches. Baseball is a game of inches.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't sound like a lot. Again, get in the box and try to hit a curveball going 84 miles an hour and having a good enough eye to see that it's 6 inches off the plate and you take it and you get called out for it. Yeah, it's incredibly, it's bad. They're going to lose. I mean, I think you're going to see them in 2025. And if you would ask me 4 years ago if I was ever going to vote for that, I would tell you no, but I would vote wholeheartedly and quickly yes now.
Any final thoughts?
Tour championship, give me Rory McIlroy. He's going to start 2 shots behind Schefter. So whoever asked for it earlier, I think Rory wins another one. I think he played great last week, just didn't make any putts. He always plays well at Eastlake. So I will go with Rory to win.
Okay,
we got obscure sports corner right now. So I'll just piggyback off of that. You got some more track and field championships going on tomorrow in Budapest. You got your 200 meters semifinals. Noah Lyles and Sha'Carri Richardson both won in the 100. Both of them are trying to go for the double there. Do want to show some love too. Asia Wilson tied WNBA record, 53 points in the game. So definitely want to give her some love.
You know what? Go ahead, finish. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I almost use that as my "you got to be kidding me." I'm not even kidding. What they did at the end of the game was so Bush. I didn't like it.
Oh, they brought her back in the game to shoot the 2 technicals?
Bro, they were taking intentional fouls of 16 with 30 seconds to go to get the ball back offensively.
I know.
It's so Bush. I love Asia Wilson. Listen, I'm the biggest Aces fan there is. Everybody knows why. But, I watched that last night. I was like, yo, this is terrible. I
don't know why. Tell me why.
What?
Why are you the biggest Aces fan? You said everybody knows why.
Oh, my futures bet.
Oh. I still think that Stewie's better than Asia Wilson, if we're being honest.
Yeah, we said this last week.
Yeah, I agree. She got a better.
I have no final comments. Thank you for tuning in.
I had one more.
Oh, good.
Sally just interrupted me,
I bet. You said go.
College football's back. I know we didn't go over any other games, but it's back this week. You got USC playing. You got Notre Dame playing. I get to be back in my happy space.
When is Coast to Coast debuting?
Saturday morning, baby.
This Saturday.
This Saturday.
100%.
100%.
Tune in to Wire2Wire Saturday morning for Coast to Coast and you have a trio?
We do.
Trio. Got me, my man, College Cottrell, and we are going to debut Mr. West Coast. That's what we're going to call him. The Oregon Duck, mega fan, Mr. Alex Elmore is going to be our West Coast correspondent.
Love it. Love it. That's what I wanted to hear. So tune in to Wire2Wire. Sideline to Sideline is tomorrow night. Coast to Coast is Saturday morning. And I appreciate you guys listening to Wire2Wire this week. I'm the NFL genius, Gene Walzak. That's College Cottrell. And we got Uncle Shally, a.k.a. Scholastic Shally, during the college football season. This was episode 150, and we are signing